I'd like to call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for February 16, 2010. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's begin with the introduction of the board members. Let's start to my left.
Scott Kilgore.
John McRae. Todd Chernick.
Gary Willis.
Marsha Parsons.
Nancy Plesnarski.
Walt Recook.
The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-legal board composed of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determinations. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by four considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance, and B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant, and C, relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties, and D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. A sign variance may only be approved under the following circumstances: where existing foliage or structures bring about a hardship whereby a sign meeting minimum letter size, square footage, and height requirements cannot be read from an adjoining public road. Has everybody received a copy of the January meeting minutes?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval of January meeting minutes, please raise your hand. Opposed? Let it be known that it passed 7-0. At this time, we present petition number V09-019. Angela, will you please present?
Petition number V09-019, 2845 Bethany Road. Requested variances are as follows. Part 1, to allow encroachment into the 50-foot stream buffer. Part 2, to allow encroachment into the 75-foot impervious setback. Background. The site is located at the southeast corner of Bethany Bend and Cogburn Road intersection. The 64.48 acre tract is currently zoned CUP, which stands for Community Unit Plan, per 05Z115. Although Chatham Homes started construction of a residential development, the project was abandoned, and the Fulton County Board of Education purchased the property in 2008. An intermittent stream currently runs southwesternly from the northeast property corner to an existing detention pond located in the south central quadrant of the property, shown as Stream 1 on the site plan. In addition, two smaller intermittent streams flow into Stream 1 on the eastern side of the property, Streams 2 and 3. Another small branch, Stream 4, flows directly into the detention pond. The proposed site plan is the end result of several redesigns in the applicant's attempt to place all of the required buildings and amenities required by Fulton County's educational specifications for high schools, while minimizing the impact to the buffers. There are currently 5 areas where the site components encroach into the 75-foot impervious buffer or the 50-foot stream buffer. The track around the soccer football stadium. The property behind the proposed school site is the only remaining option for connecting to Highway 9. The City of Milton has requested that Fulton County Schools provide access along the school's south property line for a future road connection. This connection shifted the baseball field and stadium to the north causing the running track and perimeter retaining wall to encroach into the 75-foot impervious setback by approximately .04 acres. In addition, the track and retaining wall encroach into the wetland area south of Stream 3 by approximately .06 acres. The Board of Education has received approval under the USACE nationwide permit program for this wetland encroachment. Remediation will be provided according to the terms of this permit. The driveway is an extension of the existing road constructed as part of the Chatham development. The driveway to the stadium baseball field complex. The new driveway and its retaining wall will encroach into the 75-foot impervious setback of Stream 4 by approximately .05 acres. The new driveway and its retaining wall will encroach into the 50-foot stream buffer of Stream 4 by approximately .01 acres. The fire lane driveway around the southwest building corner. The City of Milton Fire Marshal requires a roadway around the perimeter of the high school building for access of fire trucks. The new roadway and its retaining wall will cause encroachment into the 75-foot impervious setback of Stream 1 of approximately .03 acres. The 240 by 360-foot practice field. By orienting the field in an east-west direction, the applicant avoids the need to fill and pipe the end of Stream 2. The field and its north-south retaining walls will encroach into the 75-foot impervious setback of Stream 2 and 3. Other than the retaining walls, the field will be grass, negating any impact of the impervious setback. The applicant proposes .01 acres of encroachment into the 50-foot stream buffer and .12 acres into the 75-foot impervious setbacks. The total encroachment is approximately 0.13 acres. Chapter 14, Article 6, Section 5A.1 states, an undisturbed natural vegetative buffer shall be maintained for 50 feet, measured horizontally on both banks as applicable, of the stream as measured from the point of rested vegetation. Part 2 states, an additional setback shall be maintained for 25 feet, measured horizontal, beyond the undisturbed natural vegetative buffer in which all impervious cover shall be prohibited. Grading, filling, and earth moving shall be minimized within the setback. Therefore, variance is required for the above encroachments. Per the list of variance considerations, staff has received an alternative plan from the applicant. This plan, dated received January 4th, 2010, shows the 234 by 360-foot practice field oriented in a north-south direction. The BOE has stated that this is the ideal orientation due to sun and visibility concerns. The option would produce an encroachment into the 75-foot impervious setback and 50-foot stream bank buffer by approximately 99 feet 6 inches. This option would also require a variance for encroachment into the 25-foot state buffer from the State of Georgia Environmental Protection Division. So see Arborist comments pertaining to these options. Also, for the considerations, the applicant is required to provide mitigation for the approximately 0.13 acres of impervious setback and the stream buffer encroachment. The submitted site plan indicates the use of pervious materials for the footpath connecting the pedestrian bridge over Stream 1 to the practice field. The applicant indicated that stormwater runoff from the campus would be controlled through storm drainage structures terminating into one of 4 water quality ponds, which would then drain into the existing detention pond. Considerations for stream buffer variance also include the long-term and construction water quality impacts of the proposed variance and whether issuance of the variance is at least as protective of natural resources and the environment. The applicant states that due to the small amount of encroachment, water quality impacts will be little, if any. The applicant also states that the designer has worked hard to minimize the impact on the buffer while still fitting in all the buildings and facilities that the high school needs. This petition did not go before the DRB for courtesy review. The staff held a focus meeting on February 1st, 2009, in which the following comments were provided. Building plan review, no issues. Site plan review, the following comments. Number 1, prior to permitting, the applicant must demonstrate that the impact has been mitigated. Number 2, if the variance is granted, the applicant must provide additional erosion and sediment measures at impact areas and keep the duration of exposure to a minimum. Number 3, prior to permitting, applicant must adjust impact areas on the plan to include all disturbances and provide a barrier, such as a temporary chain link fence, to entry into the protected areas. Number 4, the applicant has not been before the Fulton County Soil and Water Conservation District. Number 5, some of the encroachments shown do not account for the area required to construct slopes or retaining walls. Arborist, east-west orientation. Field located in this area would place it outside of the state waters buffers to the streams to both the north and south. However, it may encroach or nearly so the 25-foot impervious setback. This design will also require the removal of more trees than the previous plan. Most of the trees removed would be in the heavily wooded area, with removal occurring up to the buffers. Most of the trees removed per this plan would occur where there is a grade change that will require an increase in height of retaining walls and an increase to length. In short, one plan will require the removal of more trees in the nicely wooded area and preserve the intermittent spring, which has little definition and little vegetation. The other would require the piping of the intermittent stream at its origin with fewer trees removed and less altering of the area. Design submitted showing sports field with a north-south orientation. What appears to be an insignificant intermittent stream has been observed to have little but continuous flow. There is no spring head located, rather an area of ground seepage as the origin. Again, there is little flow with no well-developed stream banks. Water does not have the continuous flow towards the larger streams as it goes subsurface. Most of the central to east central area of the sports field, as shown, has much more level terrain than the central west central area, as well as fewer trees proposed for removal. The field located with this orientation would impact the northern intermittent stream, requiring piping in this area, and could possibly improve or enhance the stream. Few trees would be removed, trees which are lone groups in areas with much scrub. Less grading would be required as well as less retaining wall in both height and length. Much of the area in this plan is open field. DOT. The current layout for the school provides 2 entrances. The traffic volumes assigned to each of the entrances were based on estimated bus trips and parent drop-off percentages. Approximately 30% of all the vehicles entering and exiting the school will use the traffic light at State Route 9 in Bethany. By providing the potential for a future connection from the school to State Route 9, some of this traffic could be routed to an alternate entrance and would alleviate some of the volume at State Route 9 in Bethany. The traffic measures needed for an entrance from State Route 9 to the school and traffic routing would need to be studied in more detail. The provision for a future connection should be considered at this time in the planning stage. Recommended conditions. Should the board choose to approve the application, staff recommends the following conditions. 1, the applicant should provide a stub for the future driveway leading towards Highway 9. 2, the applicant should provide 4 board horse fence painted black along the frontages of Cogburn Road and Bethany Benton. And 3, all retaining walls should be faced with or constructed of stone, brick, or decorative concrete modular block. If any retaining wall equals or exceeds 3 feet in height, a continuous evergreen planting should be required adjacent to it. And this concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask a question. I'm not sure who in the staff would best handle it, but it looks like it's probably an arborist call. By reading what you've written, Mr. Law, are you stating that you feel that perhaps some of these streams may be actually ephemeral and not require a buffer?
The stream I'm sorry, I don't have them in front of me. It runs,
Please take mine. I got it. I'll be more than willing to share. Are we able to put anything up on the screen to show this map to the audience?
Let me try.
If you don't mind, let's see if we can be high-tech here and help everybody understand. Uh-oh. With that little device, of course, you'll have 16 security systems scanning it to make sure. No. This is as good as any. Can you make it larger? Anybody in the audience a pro at making this larger? Lower right hand? And just keep on clicking?
Yeah, it's good.
Getting closer.
What's better? I like these.
is that good?
Yes, sir.
It's up to you. You're the one who's pointing.
Okay, the east-west stream right there, number 2, is what they had, when they submitted their plans and shown that as an intermittent spring. We've been out there since then to look at that, at their request. It almost could be considered an ephemeral, but as a definition within the state, the way it defines it, if it's not lacking, if it lacks, say, a ripple or a pooling, then it could be considered ephemeral. It did not detect where it was lacking the pooling or the rippling. And
I know I've got my little guide that I
Right,
always
and so
like
that
referring
was-
to.
that was what was making us keep it classified as an intermittent spring, was just the presence of ripples and pooling.
So, in other words, that I looked at it too, and I just wondered about that, and I saw your wording and all, and I kind of said, this seems interesting that's the way you're looking at it too, and I'm going, I can understand what you're looking at. Is it something where they've looked at you as being the expert to determine that, or is this something that their expert provided you?
No, they had asked me to come out there and look at the site with them again.
Okay.
And that's when we looked at it extensively, and I said, just really trying to make a determination. It might have been one that could have gone either way, but the fact that it was already classified as intermittent is something that we didn't feel comfortable in overturning.
And when you said classified as intermittent, by whom?
Well, that's what they submitted on the plans. It was intermittent.
Okay. And was this by, and I guess I'll ask them this question, but who in their staff recommended that it be considered ephemeral, or not ephemeral?
Well, I
but
think it was
intermittent?
submitted by their surveyors, engineers, or it was Morton Alabelli, or whoever
Okay.
did the plans for them, if I'm correct on that.
Okay, so you don't feel the city could work with them anymore to kind of look at this in a different fashion? Maybe, and what I'm thinking in particular is it something where that beginning point that's where I always have problems, is where is that beginning point? Where am I seeing some of those attributes? And, but you're saying,
That's correct. There was not an actual, other than just ground seepage, did not find the actual spring head that you typically see in a lot of the streams. But again, the ground seepage could still be, the originating point of the stream.
right,
But the fact that it had no really defined channel, rest of vegetation, no stream bed or anything.
Right.
So it was lacking a lot, really lacking a lot. That would be classified as a stream.
and I know we've had probably more rain in the past 4 months than most of us have seen in the past 4 years.
Right.
In 1 year. Okay, can you kind of describe your east-west concept? And I had problems of visualizing which fields you're talking about changing or looking at, and can you kind of just point?
The orientation it is now was what we're looking at, the east-west.
Okay,
And that's where it'd be really doing minimal disturbance to the stream buffer right here. Again, very little vegetation in that area.
sure.
No stream banks or anything in that area. Most of the disturbance would occur in this area as far as the trees. It's going to be out of this buffer over here, the number 3. But it would still be, like I said, it would be eliminating some trees. You definitely have some grade change right here, so you're going to be changing topography. The north-south, the other orientation, would do less disturbance to this area, but you're going to be removing the trees in this area right here. Not as many, but there still are some trees in here where the seepage, originates right in this area. So you would be, so almost a trade-off, really. I don't think there's a whole lot more disturbance as what we were looking at, the amount of trees and the amount of area that's going to be disturbed in this orientation and the other. One's just impacting the spring head, or the seepage area. The other's just going to be removing more trees and or at least the topography change.
So basically, everything you were describing was just basically for that one field. When you're talking about sporting field, that was the field you were talking about. It wasn't any other field.
No. This
Okay.
is the area. I'm sorry. This is the area
no
we're
problem.
talking about right here.
Okay, and then next on the road that is going by the stadium, there looks like there's an encroachment into the, I guess, the buffer in that area. And I can't, now I've lost my plan. I'm using a plan that's too small in print. But is that also part of the buffer thing for that road? Because I thought roads were exempt. And I'm sorry, so let me look at somebody's bigger plan. I'm sorry. Number 4, it's number 4 on the plan. Do you see number 4?
Right. Yeah.
And it shows 2,060 square feet, and it also shows 156 square feet. Oh, sorry. But you see number 4? I was trying to understand why was that considered a buffer issue if, I know they're trying to go perpendicular.
I can probably answer that. I think the crossing itself, further, I guess it's west, further down at the stream is exempt,
Okay,
but the rest of the road is not. So I think the ordinance literally says crossing.
okay, so, so in other words, if somebody interpreted further on this plan versus less, it would be okay, and by us being tighter and making it, and before the road crosses, it's considered a buffer. Okay, I'm just trying to understand what we're looking at, but normally, if that creek, number 4, went across into the bottom of the A.N. Plaza, or somewhere in that area, you would have been okay with crossing a stream if it went to that point. I know it's hypothetical, but I'm just trying to understand.
And it would also have to be perpendicular. So.
Right, and that's why I mentioned going towards the A.N. Plaza to make it perpendicular. So I was trying to say, if that happened. Are there any other major tree issues out here? Now, I've got the arborist here. I might as well ask that question just to see if there are
Specimen trees?
any other things we need to be looking out for.
Well, there are specimen trees. Those are being addressed. Most of the tree issues in here would already be in the stream buffers and the setbacks. A lot of this area is already cleared outside of that area, so the disturbance really would be minimal as far as any excessive tree removal, with the exception of the bottom right corner.
And are you recommending any recompense or any type of trees for either the buffer issues or what's required by our code for trees?
There will be recompense for any specimens removed. Buffers anywhere where it's sparsely vegetated, at least, or any disturbance would require some additional plantings if they do any additional disturbance within the buffers.
But if they disturb the buffers, are you making them do any recompense somewhere else because they've disturbed that buffer?
We haven't gotten that far. We have discussed with them about a mitigation plan. If they, for instance, if they went north-south and had to pipe that stream or something, there possibly would be some mitigation if they did disturb the stream buffers in those areas.
Okay.
And there'll be tree save areas, because you were talking about less trees being taken out on this plan.
Less trees.
You'll have tree save?
Oh, yes, it'll definitely be tree save. Like I said, all around the stream, just about, so.
Great.
Any other questions for staff? Go ahead, Mr. Kilgore.
I just want to be clear, because when I read your write-up earlier, it sounded like the north-south was fewer tree, less tree impact. That would imply piping the stream number 2. What we're seeing on the plan is the east-west orientation, with more tree impact, but not piping stream number 2. Do I have that correct?
That is correct.
I have one question for staff.
Go ahead, sir.
Regarding the floorboard fence requirement, it's my understanding, I just need confirmation, that this property is surrounded on 3 sides by the northwest Fulton overlay. Is that correct? The property to the south, what is that property zone?
To the south, that's the road, isn't it?
To the south, if you're looking at the plat, it would be to the right.
That's Stone Creek Church.
I believe it's AG1.
Okay. And from staff's viewpoint, are the setbacks all around this property as reflected on the plan appropriate for the current zoning?
No, it's not totally adhering to the setbacks. And also, remember, this property is not zoned AG1, it's CUP because of the previous residential subdivision that had been platted. But technically, the Board of Education is exempt from the requirements of the zoning ordinance, so we really couldn't force them to adhere to those.
So as the city and our board considers this application, the setbacks that are shown on here, the rear yard setback at 50, side yard at 25, one side yard at 75, are all in the front setback of 50 foot. That's in keeping with the ordinance.
I can't read my copy. Let's see, the school is out, so the setback, the building is out of the setback. So, if that's the concern, they are adhering to that. Some of the accessories features, like the softball field and the baseball field, encroach into the setbacks, but the building is out of the setback.
Okay, so do we expect has the city received any variance requests for those setback issues?
No, like I said, the school board is exempt from the zoning ordinance, so we can't force them to adhere to those, so they don't have to.
So they can technically build up the lot line,
Yes.
regardless of boundaries of Northwest Overlay, AG1, O&I, doesn't
They
matter.
are
Okay,
exempt from all
just
of
want to
that.
clarify.
The stream buffer articles are in a separate ordinance. That's why they're here for the variance for that.
Okay, thank you.
City ordinance, I should say.
Thank you, Marcia. Well, go ahead, Mr. Kilgore.
Okay, I guess Mr. Sanders is not here this evening, so I'll address it to you. Mr. Sanders had several issues in the site review, and I didn't see any of those in the staff's recommended conditions. Can you address why those were omitted from the official condition recommendation?
For the most part, there are standard concerns that will be addressed with the LDP.
So they'll be enforced anyway, is what
Oh,
you're
yeah.
saying, so we don't need to, it would be redundant for us to include those.
Right, all of this will be covered by the LDP.
Yeah, all of those points? Can you verify?
Yes.
All 5 of them? Okay.
Like, I don't, for example, I don't think they have fully engineered the retaining walls, like around the field at this point, but all of that will be covered by the LDP.
And in the background, it mentions that Board of Education has received approval under the USA's nationwide permit program for the wetland encroachment. Has the city seen a copy of that permit?
The Army Corps permit, I have not seen a copy of that. Jimmy Sanders may, but I have not.
Okay.
The issue kind of went away when they reoriented the field.
So that, okay, that's the north-south orientation that would
Right.
require that. Right?
Any other questions for staff before we open it to the applicant?
I do have a question, Angela. Could you tell me why we haven't addressed Highway 9 ingress and egress at this time?
Well, it is in terms of the driveway
Uh-huh.
on the south side that we're asking them to put in. As the report stated, that's why we are, I mean, that's all we can do right now.
That's all we can do?
I believe we are in discussion with the property owner in back of the property, but, we really can't move forward with that until the variance is taken care of and this site plan is approved, so. But they do have provision for that driveway in there, this plan.
Yes, sir.
On the road that you're talking about, where does that tie into? Is that back by the tire and the retail center over there, beside Publix? And
I think
I'm just
it
trying to
would
get
go
a
through what's residential property right now, but that is, the Publix and all that is further up,
okay,
further north.
all right, so it's got a ways to go.
Publix is up there by the stream, it's by like
Okay.
number 2, I think.
In their use of alternative plan options, did they consider purchasing any of the residential property on the front right portion of this plan, AG1,
Not
to
that
give them
I-
more property?
On the front right, along Cogburn,
Yes, ma'am.
I think they said they have right of first refusal on that piece of property. I don't think that property owner was interested in selling at this point, but I
She
think,
originally owned all this land.
She did. That would give them more.
yeah, she still lives there, so.
She elderly?
Yes.
Will the applicant please come forward to present? And if you would state your name and address for the board and the city, we would certainly appreciate it.
My name is Patrick Burke. I'm Chief of Operations for Fulton County Schools. Though I'm a planner by training, I'm not going to be doing the majority of the talking. Mr. Bob Susanbach with CGLS, who's the designer on this, will be doing the majority of our presentation this evening. I did want to take just a moment to give a little bit of an overview of why we're here to begin with. Back in March 2007, when the voters of Fulton County passed the SPLOST referendum funding new school construction, it was contemplated at that time to build 2 new high schools in North Fulton County, one to the east of Georgia 400, which opened this fall at the Johns Creek site and relieved overcrowding over on that side of 400. And this is the one scheduled to relieve overcrowding on the west side of Georgia 400. Without this school, currently, of course, the high schools in this area are overcrowded. Milton High School is over 2,500 students, or as of the fall, first month enrollment, which is peak enrollment typically at high school. It was overcrowded that much, and is projected to go towards the 3,000 point in total enrollment within the next 5 years, which is really where we started when we started the SPOS program years and years ago, which started this whole building program with Fulton. So we're there again, and we're looking forward to building this school and addressing the overcrowding that remains in North Fulton County. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. Susanbach, who's going to discuss the particulars of the site plan.
My name is Bob Susanbach. I'm with CGLS Architects, and we are the architects and planners of the high school campus. I think we've gone over the areas of encroachment, but I'll address them one more time if you would like. The first area of encroachment is at the end of the football stadium and track, and minor areas, and the primary concern here, or the reason we had to shift the stadium into the 75-foot buffer, is because of the desired road that we wanted to place here that would eventually connect to State Route 9. The second area of encroachment.
Sir, could we get you to do that? Or do you have a pointer or something that you could?
This one?
Yeah. Stay closer, then the people in the audience can see exactly what we're seeing.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
The second area of encroachment is actually right here, and that is where we are. The former developer came straight through the site and actually turned at a 90-degree angle. We are curving the road to allow the stadium to fit into this zone, and because of that, we are encroaching a small bit right there on that 75-foot and 50-foot setback. But as you'll see, the setbacks were already affected by the previous developer. They were cut off right there because of retaining walls that were built in that area. We're proposing to take those retaining walls out with our design and actually increase the stream buffer area that's in the zone. So, in a sense, it is a trade-off. We are improving what's been done by somebody else. The other encroachment is right here and right here on the corner, and these are a result of the fire lane that we had to put in to appease the fire marshal and provide access around 360 degrees of the school building. We have studied a number of different alternatives. We've shifted the building closer to Cogburn Road. We've put the stadium farther back without the road at the south end of the campus. We've tried a number of different things to try to stay out of the buffers. What we feel is this is the best layout for the school with the minimum amount of encroachments into the stream buffers, and will have the greatest aesthetic impact for the community. It puts the school farther away from Cogburn Road and Bethany Road. We could move it. We don't need to if we can have these buffers, the encroachments. So, any other questions about our presentation and proposal?
Do you have a civil plan, something that might show the grades of the site?
We do. I don't have it with me.
Okay. Maybe you can talk in general terms. In Stream 4, could you describe the grade there? If you're removing the retaining wall, what's the...
Somebody's plan may be covering something.
What's the...
Are you talking about right in here?
Right.
It's about a...
I guess my concern is, what's the runoff going to be? I mean, is that a potential flood site? Given that there's, it's just going to be a free road, correct me if I'm wrong, no berm, no swale, no retaining wall between that and that, water source there.
The retaining wall that occurs right here is it's made out of modular block.
Okay.
It's probably a 15-foot drop down to the stream bed.
And there's weep holes in that?
Yes, there are.
Okay. Could you describe your mitigation plan for the practice field?
There is, when the field is running a north-south access, as we discussed earlier, we had 2 water quality ponds that were just to the west of the field. So any runoff from the field, fertilizers, water, whatever, would be treated there before it would go into the stream. In this current situation, the east-west orientation, we now have retaining walls on the three sides that we didn't have on the north-south orientation.
I apologize, there's a mixture of information in our packet, and we only have one
We only have one
site
plan.
in front of us, so I'm
I
trying to
understand.
reconcile exactly what this new plan entails.
The north-south orientation was submitted earlier,
Right.
about a month ago. The feedback we received was that, did you consider running the field east-west? If you do that, you may not have to encroach in the stream, in stream two. That's why we've now resubmitted the design or the plan with the
we've got
east-west
this all.
orientation.
Yes, sir. And I guess for me, the elephant in the room, why is the practice field of that size? Because
Fulton
it
County
seems to me,
Schools, it's a practice field for soccer,
Right.
lacrosse, and football.
okay,
The school system requires two fields, one a synthetic turf field, which is your main stadium, and then a practice field that will be sodded. And the field needs to be 234 feet wide by 360 feet long. That's their ed spec requirement.
that's per spec.
Yes.
Okay.
Plus, you need runoff on either side. So if you put the retaining wall right at the end of the field, you have nowhere to run off.
That's going to be my next question. Is the site plan as we see it there indicative of the true encroachment?
Yes.
Given your laydown area, your retaining wall, slopes, anything?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Everything is to scale.
I have a question. I know they talked about trailers. Where would the trailers be on this property?
I cannot
Future growth.
address that one this time.
I just wondered, I mean, it just is so compact.
Could you tell me what type of plantings you propose for the mitigation areas?
When you talk about mitigation areas, are you talking about the water quality ponds?
Are you going to do any more plantings in that area, or you've got a proposed mitigation pathway, so I'm assuming there's some low area through there. We'd be adding some plantings in that area?
Every area of ground that we touch that will be exposed will be either planted on with trees, grass, mulch, or some kind of shrub material. That's a requirement in your zoning, I'm sorry, not zoning, it's a building code requirement.
Yes, sir.
Sure. One of the requirements for stream buffer variance is for the applicant to provide a topography on the site plan. And do you have a topography? Because it's very difficult for us to look at a one-dimensional view like this. After walking the property myself, there's significant grade variations throughout the site. Do you have any topography for us to look at as required?
We have submitted drawings to the city, I believe, well, it's for an LDP. Documents have been submitted to the city that include all the civil drawings that are represented by the construction or design here.
Well, one of the
With this
concerns that
right
was
now.
brought up by staff, so I guess the answer to that is no, you don't have that for
Not
tonight.
with me here, no.
Because one of the concerns that staff brought up, and the concern that I have is, without understanding the grade variations, it's difficult for us to understand the actual encroachment that may be required for the retaining walls, the amount of land disturbance that might be required for this practice field, including tree removal, which is also another part that's also required for the applicant, is to submit the current forestry view.
Hang on, let him answer.
I can address part of your question by showing you the aerial photograph. The area we're talking about is right here. If we run the football field or practice field in a north-south orientation, we are affecting that part of the site, most of which is already grass. If we run the field east-west, we're now cutting into that large cluster of trees. It's a major, we're affecting the existing trees that grow in a major way.
Mr. Rico.
On the, couple of things. Number one, on your wetlands encroachments, are you mitigating off-site or on-site for wetlands?
There is no mitigation that we have to do for the Corps. They've accepted the encroachment as is.
So you're less than a tenth of an acre, is that
Yes,
what you're
we are.
saying?
Yeah.
Okay, next question, on the area that is shown on this plan as being .01 acres for the stream buffer encroachment, and then the 75-foot impervious stream bank buffer of 0.12. What I'm perceiving is you're asking us for allowing that amount of acreage, not more, not less. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So when we're talking about a site plan being designed, so when we're looking at a site plan being designed, then we're looking at those amounts of impervious or buffers being set. It's not some vague number, it's an actual amount.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Again, a question, I'm not sure if this is best directed to staff or to the applicant, but in our background material, it says the plan dated received January 4th, 2010, which is this plan. It says, shows the 234-foot by 360-foot practice field oriented in north-south direction. Now, we know that that's inaccurate. This is the east-west layout. But according to that plan, you state that this option would require a variance for encroachment into the 25-foot state buffer from the state of Georgia Environmental Protection Division. So is that still valid based on the one we're?
That's referring to the plan on page 11.
Okay.
So which plan is the Board of Education requesting as their preference, east, west, or north, south on the practice fields?
Let me say, we initially submitted the north-south orientation. Staff asked us, did you consider every opportunity that you had? Did you consider every option? Would you please look at the east-west orientation? That's why you have two drawings. We've shown both. We would prefer the north-south orientation.
In the site plan review, our staff member notes that you have not been before the Fulton County Soil and Water Conservation District. Is that still the case?
That's true.
Okay. Do you have an
We
intention?
intend to do that.
Okay.
It's the next course or step we would take along.
Okay.
We meet tomorrow.
I think part of our problem is we have a large in the east-west and it's very small in the north-south. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
We submitted large of both, but I'm not sure where they are.
I do have larger copies of the alternate plan. I didn't include those since that was literally just to show you that they have considered an alternate, but I mean, if you need to see them, I can get them.
okay. And could you tell us why you preferred the north-south over the one that is in the larger plan that we have?
Staff or the applicant?
Applicant, please. I understood you didn't want that one.
There are several reasons. As a planner, I know that in laying out a practice field, it needs to go north-south because that's the best orientation for a practice field, so that you don't have sun in the eyes of the visitors or either team as they're playing up and down the field. So that's the best orientation. Given no other choice, you would do an east-west orientation. The other reason we picked the north-south orientation in our original submittal was because it had less encroachment on the trees and the area that we see as being the green part of the campus. We wanted to leave as much area undisturbed as possible. Putting the field north-south had the least amount of impact. The stream that we're encroaching on, that we're going to seek state approval on, it is questionable whether it's intermittent or ephemeral. It's kind of in between. And so those are the main two reasons. Well, I'll add a third, I'm sorry. I also care and am concerned about our owner's budget. To run the field east and west would require much more grading and retaining walls on 3 sides of the field. We would also have to have a fence on those same 3 sides of the field, and we would also have to have a 30-foot netting that would go up so that balls kicked wouldn't go into the stream. So there are a number of different reasons why the north-south orientation makes more sense, and it gives you a better field that can be used a greater extent of the day, a greater portion of the day.
Mr. Rico.
I've got a question for Mr. Burke, if that's possible. Mr. Burke, do you remember my name?
I do.
How's things over at Johns Creek High School going?
At Johns Creek, in terms of,
The erosion control and the stabilization of the streams that were disturbed, as well as the detention pond.
may I call Mr. DiStadio to give the latest?
Yes, sir.
Mr. DiStadio is with Parsons Corporation. They represent our...
Mr. Chair, point of order, could we continue with the proceedings before us?
Well, let me explain why this is an important issue, and you may find out why.
Go ahead.
The reason, and Mr. Burke will tell you, we had some major erosion issues at the Johns Creek High School. I was involved with that and trying to get that issue corrected. I don't want this issue to come up on this location, and that's why I'm asking some questions about where we are and how we're going to go ahead and address that issue on this site.
And let me just say, it's always our goal to be a responsible developer of the land. It's always our goal.
And you did a great job, by the way. I want to compliment you. Once I got you involved, things turned 180 degrees, so I want to compliment you.
I appreciate that. Let me bring Mr. DiStadio again. He represents Parsons Corporation. They're our program management. We outsource construction for the district, and they're our company, our representative.
Thank you.
If you would make this
Good
quick,
evening.
we would certainly appreciate it.
I'm sorry, sir?
If you would make this quick, we would certainly
Yes.
appreciate it.
Everything that we've been asked by the Soil and Water Conservation District and the City of Johns Creek has been completed, with the exception of some of the grassing in the lower pond. And that's just because of the rain. And as soon as it gets dry enough where we can get in there and do that, but the city has been completely satisfied, and they have been speaking with the Soil and Water Conservation District.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we won't have this issue here. Is that correct?
We do not believe so, no, sir.
Okay. Let's do a better job designing it.
Any other questions for the applicant?
One quick one. When did you receive your land disturbance permit? for the
We have
site?
not received it yet. We're still in process.
Okay, so all the plan I see there, the overhead, the site disturbance is,
That's from the previous developer.
okay, so all the grading there, you haven't done anything in
That's
your
not our
moving on the
grade.
site whatsoever?
We have
Okay.
not touched the site.
No,
right.
give me the other one. What is doing that? Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
I gave it to you.
At this time, I'd like to open up to public comment, but before you start, let me make two comments. We've received two letters, one from Mrs. Lisa Cawley and one from Kelly Himes Brawley, and both of these people have asked us to read these out loud, but our board made a decision about a year ago that everybody on the board has a copy, and we would just read them ourselves and not read them out loud, just to save time, because if we get 50 of these letters, it takes forever. But duly noted that we have, all the members have seen these and have read the letters, and we appreciate those. So at this time, we'd like to open up the public comment. One quick little thing is each person that comes to speak has 2 minutes. You must fill out a card and turn it in to staff. And also remember to limit your comments directly to the two reasons that we're here, which is the variance, which is to allow encroachment in the 50-foot stream buffer and to allow encroachment in the 75-foot impervious setback. Those are the only two things that this board can discuss tonight or can retain any questions from you folks. So who'd ever like to start may come forward, please.
You have the cards.
The city's got them. Angela, do you have the cards?
These ones I put out somewhere.
Some were turned in earlier.
Let's start with the ones that are turned in.
Yeah, if you've got one, come forward. State your name, your address, please, and
May I speak first?
you sure can. Name and address and,
My name is Kelly Himes Brawley, and I live at 335 Lake Bend Court in Milton, Georgia. And I'm a mother of 3 children who attend public school here in Fulton County. Although I have positions on the Milton Cluster, LSAC, and PTA, I'm not here on their behalf. I'm here in my capacity as a resident. They haven't voted on anything nor authorized me to speak. But as I submitted in my letter to you, as a resident of Milton, I am in support of the variance, because if this variance is not given and construction of the high school is delayed, it would be a severe hardship to the community and to the students who attend Milton High School. The capacity for that school is 1,950, and they've already exceeded that. This school is to be built for the school year 2012 to 2013, and if it's not built, that number is going to be at 2,759. That's 809 students over, and there are concerns about overcrowding with additional trailers, with not being able to accommodate in terms of the school requirements for sciences and labs. There won't be enough labs for the children, enough restrooms, cafeteria space, not to mention the fact that very few will have a shot at even making any teams when there are 3,000 students almost that you're competing against. It's hard to be a well-rounded kid if you can't participate in anything, if your school is so big. And that's a concern to us. The other is the fact that this school, fortunately, is within SPLOST 3. Right now, it's still scheduled to be built and funded. And if it's delayed and it falls out of SPLOST 3, there will be no funding for it. SPLOST 3 ends in June of 2012. And right now, we're still in it. But as you know, and as you've read in the papers probably, the Georgia legislature is even talking about getting its hands on that money. And we're just concerned that later on, as taxpayers, we're going to have to pay $50 or $60 million for a school because it was delayed and fell out of SPLOST. So I would ask that the board consider those factors in determining a hardship, because they are a hardship to the community if the denial of the variance leads to delay of the construction and the lack of funding. So, thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is John Bratton. I live at 440 Bethany Green Cove in Milton, and I'm here really to talk tonight out of both sides of my mouth. And on the first side of the mouth, I'd like to oppose this and ask you to consider to oppose the moves here tonight for the variances. And the reason I'd like to ask you to oppose them is because I think Milton has done a lot of hard work in putting in regulations and guidelines that should be followed for the type of community that we want to have. And it's extremely disappointing, variances of any kind, that especially on a parcel like this, 64 acres, it's disappointing that we couldn't make it fit somehow. So I would ask you to, not only in this case, but in other case, look with a jaundiced eye at most any variance, as long as our rules and regulations are followed. I think we'll be in good shape. Now, the other side of my mouth. And I'm also the president of the Bethany Green Homeowners Association. My initial comments were my own. But many of our residents in Bethany Green are extremely concerned about the traffic volume of Bethany Bend and Cogburn, given the fact that there are numerous other schools, Kings Ridge right across the street, and what have you. We very much support staff's recommendation to stub out and have access at the back part of the property. We think that is a mandatory thing to do. We hope it gets done. And in the scheme of things, we want to make sure that that access is provided so we can at least minimize, somewhat lessen, or whatever, the amount of traffic that we have to contend with on a daily basis. So the bottom line of that part is, to the extent, and several of us were not sure how much of the orientation here is really due to making room for the road and how much is for the practice field and all that, but to the extent that these variances are required to accommodate the road and make sure that in the future we do have access to Highway 9, we think that is a very important thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Michael Justice. I live in the Hermitage. I'm on our homeowners board of directors, and I speak mainly for myself, but many of our neighbors that we were here when they developed this property or initial plans were set up that Chatham was going to develop this, that he put a bond in place to protect our residents of the erosion and the runoff that was going into our area, into our neighborhood, into our retention pond. And we're very concerned with granting these variances that all the speed of the water will be much more erosion and much more sediment which would be deposited downstream. I mean, to us, it looks like we're trying to do a lot to put a high school in a too small of an area. I mean, it looks like we may have made a bad investment, that there should have been a larger site for this. But I want y'all to be aware that, we all try to be good neighbors, and when Chatham made his development, he made a commitment to us and provided a bond that we would not have any more sediment in our lakes and ponds and streams, and provided that we had remediation of check dams and stuff to protect our neighborhood and be a good neighbor. And that's one of the considerations I would ask all y'all to look at when y'all consider this. Thank you.
My name is Lena Lee, and I live at 110 North Christopher's Run in Milton, Georgia. And I think we can do win-win here, and I'm asking you all to look at two things. The topography, as you mentioned, I think that's very important. This is a very, very hilly piece of land, and if we're going in there and flattening everything out, we're definitely going to change the environmental aspect of this property, knocking down the trees, flattening it out, adding retention walls. I can't tell from this new map if there's retention ponds on this site. There had been in the past. There was a retention pond that was right in front of the football stadium. So there apparently is a fair amount of water on this piece of property, and that concerns me. And I appreciate this additional road piece that I think would potentially help with the traffic. But I'm just wondering if we're squeezing too much, we're asking too much with these variances, squeezing too many things on this site, and therefore we need to look at purchasing additional land adjoining this piece of property so that it can be a win-win without infringing upon our stream buffers, without affecting the hermitage down the road and the wildlife, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sally Hildebrandt. I reside at 5115 John Keeler Drive in Alpharetta, and I've already turned in my card. I just wanted to say, after reading this, I'm a parent of 3 children at Milton High School. I serve on the Milton LSAC. Overcrowding has been a serious issue at Milton. There are out-of-capacity land area for additional portables. There's 12 portable classrooms currently on the site. It will now impact practice fields or parking lots to be able to put additional portables in there. Getting a high school built on time is critical to this area. It looks like a lot of these variances are somewhat at the request, are impacted by the request of the City of Milton to add certain things. So I would just ask that if the City of Milton wants those things, to be able to have the variances so that this high school continue for the area. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Denise Hackman. I live at 13425 Providence Lake Drive. I turned my card in earlier. I wear several hats. I'm a mom of 4. I have a graduate of Milton High School. I have a current Milton High School student. I am a co-president of PTA at Summit Hill, and I am a co-chair to LSAC. Again, I am not speaking in that capacity, but as a mom and a parent and an involved community member. I have several things I wanted to bring up. I know that traffic came up, and I think we all live in the City of Milton, and we all know that traffic is an issue in the City of Milton. And while I understand that traffic is an issue around the new high school, it's around that everywhere we go in this city, and I know this is something you're all very aware of, and I would hope that asking for this variance traffic would not be, that's something that's going to have to be dealt with at another time. The other thing is the acreage. I know that people think it's a smaller site. Johns Creek is built on 49 acres. Milton does have 70, although there's wetlands around that. And And so this 64 acres, I'm not sure there's another piece of acre in the city of Milton or on this side of 400 that's going to be the perfect site. You know, there's going to be issues, I think, everywhere. So these small variances are not that big of a deal. Everybody else has kind of hit the highlights. Overcrowding at Milton is a huge piece, and I see the kids barely able to walk down the halls. I have spoken to the principal there. The next place there are trailers to go are in the parking lots, which would cause a huge problem. You all can probably see that. Or in the front where the flagpole is, and again, that's a difficult place to put trailers. The last thing is there's talk in the community about, you know, the bottom line being, why do we want a new high school? People don't want to leave Milton, and I know that's very hard. A lot of parents have said, well, if we get this delayed for a year or two, my kids can stay at Milton and be grandfathered in. So I wonder sometimes what the motivation is when, for 1 or 2 kids or 3 or 4, when we have to look at 3,000 kids being affected by a change, and is it worth 3 variances when we're looking at 3,000 kids being affected by it? So I would hope that you would support the variances. Thank you.
My name is Denise Garrigan. I'm a resident of Crooked Creek Subdivision at 410 Majestic Cove. And I really just want to echo some of the things, some of the questions that you asked in the first gentleman. We're stuck with this lot. It's very clear that they're jimmy rigging an inappropriate lot for its purpose. I mean, just look at all the winding they're having to do around creeks, but we're stuck with it. So I really have to ask that those questions that you ask about erosion, that whatever you decide, that you make sure that you're comfortable with what rules and regs you put in regarding the erosion prevention, because I think that's a huge issue. And you asked about the practice field. Just to bring it in perspective, Milton High School has 3 practice fields. The front lawn, the side between the stadium, and by the baseball fields. This one will have 1. This has already been downsized dramatically from what these kids that will be in this school are used to. She mentioned John Creek is on 49 acres. I'm hearing this has 40 usable acres. So the people you see out here are desperately trying to make sure they have a good school. The city of Milton needs to make sure that this is as good as it gets, because it's going to kill our homeowners' values. People are going to be deep sixing and moving out. You mentioned trailers. Think about all the high-density housing that's going to go into this, and the change in population just due to that. This will have no room for trailers. So whatever goes in place, you guys need to make sure that when there's adjustments in population, that Milton High School and Alpharetta High School can pick it up, because this one can't with the trailers. So I just really appeal to you that those questions you asked I thought were great, that you make sure that whatever you sign off on, that you've got it cast in stone. As a homeowner, I had to have a topography map here. They didn't. I heard a lot of sliding around, well, we know we don't have it signed, or no, we didn't bring it. But I really just ask that you make sure that whatever you do, that you feel comfortable, your questions are asked, and that you feel comfortable with what they've decided. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Laura Bentley. I live at 2500 Bethany Church Road. Thank you so much for your attention to the detail. It takes a lot of your time, and I want to thank you for that. As a rule, I usually stand up here to say, please, no variances unless there's a true hardship. We need this school. We really do. And I do see, in the spirit of compromise, there have been some good compromises here. So as you go forward as your board and make these tough decisions on our behalf, please consider the balance that we have to find here with getting a school and adhering to the high standards that we hold in the city. I also live very close to the school, and I would like it to be nice to look at, and I would like to not be stuck in traffic. So I really encourage you to consider the provision to plan for the future of what is already a very difficult traffic situation. So if you could please look forward to providing the provision for the road and the possibility for Highway 9 access. I think that we would all be very thankful for that in the future. Thank you.
Any other public comment at this time? this time, we'd like to ask the applicant to come back forward and present any rebuttal or any closing comments that you would like to make, if you're interested.
I did want to address one comment that I heard throughout this evening, and it was the issue of portable classrooms. Let me say, for the record, our intent is to build permanent classrooms, and that's what we're trying to do with this site. So the goal is to get the portables out as much as possible. With that, you're always going to have variability in enrollment. We will have the sensitivity to the fact that there are site limitations when we go to fill the school, but again, our intent is to get the portables out. And I think we've been demonstrating that over the past couple of years with the building program at Fulton County Schools. We've made huge dents in the fleet of portables, and we expect another big reduction this year, and with this school, we'll be able to make a huge dent in high school portables in North Fulton County.
While you're here, I'd like to ask you a question. Can you tell me where the school board is in relationship to an entrance/exit off of Highway 9 into the school where you are right now?
What we tried to do was accommodate in the design for the future. We don't have funds for additional land purchase, and so that really was the sticking point. We spent, I think, $18.2 million on this site, and that was available budget. And with times as tough as they are, any dollar that's spent somewhere else is getting taken from another thing in the capital program. So again, we've done studies. We've tried to work with the community and work with the city to how to mitigate traffic as much as possible. And Mr. Susanbach or Mr. DeSadio can speak to some of what we've been working on. We didn't have the funds for an additional land purchase, but we're trying to plan for the future by putting that access there per the city's request.
Follow up, sir. Is there anything on this plan as shown up there that would preclude you from doing that, tying into the Highway 9?
We don't own the land.
Yeah, I mean, but per the site plan, like for example, if we were to conditionally approve it based upon this site plan, is this how you would like it to look, given that additional knowledge, going forward, that you'd like it to ultimately tie in Highway 9?
Let me let Mr. Steiner talk about it.
Yes, with the exception of the practice field, that we're trying to accommodate what the city's asked for. I mean, the school system and the designer would prefer to have that, but that road has been put in there. That's a 2-lane road with a sidewalk on the baseball side,
right,
so that we would be able to allow kids to walk from wherever they can park. But right now, we're restricted to staying on the property that the school owns. So the superintendent has approved and has required us to put that road in, as you see. And it is a future road pending the city's getting that property, because they don't want to spend the dollars, since they don't have the dollars, to put the road in that goes nowhere. So it's segregated off, and it's set aside to be that road when the city is able to purchase the land or something else is working.
The reason I ask is because I know this redesign was, the intent that you were trying to effect was to reorient the practice field, not necessarily to address a transportation issue and the road issue. So
it was both,
okay,
as Mr. Perk said.
Okay.
One other thing is we have asked the large right-hand side there that you were talking about, the homeowner that sold the property originally. We have gone to that homeowner to try to purchase that. She still lives there. The school system does not intend to try to evict her. So we have asked her attorney and talked about first right of refusal for the school board if and when she does pass away, or whatever, she sells her property or whatever.
Just to let you know, her son is a logger. That may make an influence if you can hopefully hire him or not. I'm just kidding. But,
have you been granted first right of refusal?
I believe they have, but I don't think I don't have any knowledge of that here tonight. But the board attorney has. They've talked to their attorneys.
Now, the plan, if the road went north-south, is that completely dead? The practice field going north-south?
That's their preference.
We would like the board to consider that orientation, because not only is it less impact on those trees, but the trees that are there that you are cutting are specimen trees, and we'd like to go north-south so we don't affect the specimen trees.
But the problem I have is, what is the amount of buffer variance that would be required for that north-south orientation? I see the buffer encroachment amounts for the east-west and the summary of the others. What is it for the other direction?
Mr. Susanbach will address that, sir.
The encroachment into the 75-foot buffer, the impervious buffer is .18 acres. Excuse me, it's, the 50-foot buffer is .18 acres. Into the 25-foot state buffer, it's .15 acres. Because it's a play field, it has really no impact on the 75-foot impervious buffer.
Okay.
And it entails you piping that stream.
Yes.
For what length?
99 feet. 100 feet is the maximum allowable.
Right.
Well, let me go back. That's for just this field. My question is, what would it be for the whole site then, if we're looking at this? Are we looking at .18 acres plus the .15 plus, number 4, number 3, number, in other words, what are these other areas so that I make sure that if we didn't get some kind of comment, we could combine, like I told you, what is the amount of encroachment you're asking for?
The letter that we submitted to Angela on 12/17 stated these acreages, and what you would do is on your 75-foot impervious buffer encroachment, it would now be .16 acres, and for the 50-foot stream buffer, it would be .02 acres, 2/100ths of an acre.
Well, you said it's .18 now with the north-south. How could it, you're saying .2 or .02?
.02.
Okay, something does make sense. All right, so, all right, for the ball field, I'm hearing .18 acres for the 50-foot and .15 acres for the 25-foot. That's what you're saying for that, just that ball field. But then there are other encroachments added to that.
Well, the .18 is the 50-foot buffer, the .15 is the 25-foot. I'm not including that because that's the state buffer that we need to address with the state.
Okay, okay. But the other buffer requests, like in area number 4, there's some acreage there, .05 acres, and I can kind of do it myself. I want to make sure, because it looks like there's some in that 4 area. I mean, there's also some in the by the ball field. Why don't you take some time and just think about that and come back?
Well, I was just handed my other letter that I submitted on January the 4th.
Okay.
Which states, we took a look at the 50-foot buffer differently. We now included the 25-foot in the 50-foot.
Okay.
It would now be, the 75-foot buffers would be .16 acres. The 50-foot buffer would be .35.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Sorry for the confusion.
No, I just want to make sure that if we're, what are the differences? When I look at Plan A versus Plan B, what are our two differences? So,
Mr. Kilgore?
One other question about the north-south. Does that involve a retaining wall crossing the stream on either or both sides? Do you understand my question?
Yes, it would require a short retaining wall right where you are at the stream. Otherwise, we would have to grade down to the stream, which would require more than 99 feet. So yes, it would.
Both sides, both the east and
Just on the west side.
Just on the west side. And what's the width of that wall?
Probably.
Length.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to guess off the top of my
I
head.
want the width, because that's really.
I would say around 150 feet.
150 feet in
Well,
length.
the width of the wall would be 12 inches. The length would be 150.
12 inch wall.
Is there any encroachment necessary where the bridge terminates on the practice field side?
You are allowed a crossing over the stream, so we're not in the abutments. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
No. Because the abutment is part of the bridge, which is part of the crossing that is allowed.
Even though that abutment is happening in the buffer?
Yes.
Because on the side The school side, you show, it looks like the encroachment, but on the, again, on the termination side, it doesn't show any encroachment.
On the school side, it's the sidewalk that we're calling, we're paving that, and that's the encroachment.
Okay. All right, thanks for the clarification. It's just difficult when we don't have the topography to really understand the elevations. It goes back to my earlier concern.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Recommended conditions from staff, they mentioned that, per design standard, all retaining walls on the site should be faced with or constructed of stone, brick, or decorative concrete modular block. It sounded like that's what you're tracking on now.
Yes.
Additionally, that any retaining wall that exceeds 3 feet in height, a continuous evergreen planting shall be required adjacent to it. I wanted to verify that that's in line with your plans and specs as approved by the owner and the deal there, so that wouldn't infringe upon what you're already planning on doing on the site.
Our intent is to follow that.
Okay.
Mr. Rico?
Again, just looking at the plan in Area 4, you've got 156 square feet in the 50-foot buffer that's being disturbed. And you're showing that as being equal to 0.1 acres. Then right above it, you have 2,060 square feet, and that's equal to 0.05.
0.05.
That can't be.
Doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up. There's a difference in values. I think the 156 is wrong, but the 2060 is correct fractionally. And I just want to make sure, again, I don't want you to come back. If we work with you and try to work and get things worked out, if things can work out, I want to make sure we're giving the right numbers. And so please take a second, make sure we're doing the right thing if we look at things.
Just address your comments about the topography. We do have those drawings that we've submitted, but this is not a flat one-story school. This actually goes down to, starts at one elevation at the road and goes down. It's a multi-story building that we track the topography as much as we can, so we have least disruption. It's not a flat site, so I apologize we don't have the topography maps with you, but it's all tied into that.
To add on to what Frank just said, we've tried hard to try to get this building to fit into the site without having to do a lot of work. The building is 2-story, but it's 1-story exposure on Bethany Road. The site naturally slopes from Bethany Bend down to the stream area here, so it's sloping downhill. We're 1-story exposure here and 2-story exposure on the backside. So the building is benched into the slope, taking advantage of that. It's a compact building, trying to fit it onto the site.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Rico?
If you did apply for the state variance and you don't get it, we back to square one again if you look at the east-west. I'm not saying we're even considering that, but what happens with the north-south if you don't get the 25-foot stream buffer variance from the state?
Then we would have to go with the east-west orientation.
And I'm trying to remember, that's a 60-day process, is that correct on the?
I believe it is. The practice field itself, if you're concerned about the schedule and time, can be pulled. The schedule is driven by the building.
I understand.
That's going to take 2 years to build. The practice field is months.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, how do you get equipment back there in managing disruption to the existing streams to do your grading and tree removal?
You're allowed a temporary crossing right there,
Where would that be?
right here.
And then is it required for you to replant?
Yes, we would have to revegetate and bring it back.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So if the orientation of the practice field can be somewhat determined and worked out later, what are the two variances you need tonight? Which areas?
It would be variance at the football stadium, at the roadway, and at the building fire lane.
That's all the ones we're asking for. The orientation doesn't affect those variances. We'd have to come back with a different set of variances, at least for the upper tip.
Okay.
And we have applied for the nationwide permit through the Corps, and we have already received approval for one aspect that we were looking at. We went back to have that modified. That's been to the Corps of Engineers now for the required period of time. It's had its public vetting, and we're just waiting for the paperwork to come back, and then we would be going to the state.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Any questions for staff? At this time, I'd like to open the floor for a motion, if anybody'd like to make one.
Sure.
Mr. Cherney?
I would like to make a motion tonight to defer this variance request until such time that the applicant provides a plan for the preferred north-south orientation on the practice field, the required topography on the site plan, and the required delineation of forested and open areas on the site plan per the stream buffer variance requirements.
Second.
Discussion?
Go ahead. In addition to Todd's concerns, I think that staff's recommendations aren't complete, and that's something that I can address with them. But there's comments in their review that aren't reflected in their proposed recommendations if we were to approve.
And if I might add, my concern in requesting this deferral is, first of all, the elements that I'm asking for are required per the stream buffer variance. But even beyond that, unless we have a site plan to approve into the record, it makes it very difficult for staff and for staff to manage their adherence to that site plan going forward. So there's been some shifting as to how much we need here and how much we need there, and what's the length of the retaining walls. Put it in the plan so we can approve that plan if we deem it acceptable. That's my greatest concern without having that, and nor has the public had a chance to even see that plan to react to it.
Do you have a copy of the north-south plan?
Again, yes, I do have the previously submitted north-south orientation. It was not given to the board because that is the alternative. I mean, if you would like to see it, I can get them.
You have topography,
I have
site elevation.
the topography for the north-south elevation. I don't know if they've completed engineering on this version.
Angela, could you go over why the staff and city has preferred the larger plan, the east-west that we have in front of us? Please just go back over that again, please, for me.
The main difference, again, is the orientation of the practice field. Staff was concerned with the impact to the stream buffer. We wanted to just minimize that. The north-south orientation would have required significant infill and piping of the stream, and per the variance ordinance, they were required to show us that they had tried to minimize the encroachment, and we felt that this plan met that requirement.
And what was the designation of the stream that would be impacted? Is that the one in question?
Intermittent.
Or ephemeral?
Mm-hmm.
So
Intermittent.
okay. And it had to be piped for 99 feet, is that what I heard?
About 99 feet, yes.
Another point in support of Todd's motion, the requested variances, as stated, are pretty vague. It's just to allow encroachment into the 50-foot stream buffer and to allow encroachment into the 75-foot impervious setback. Typically, we tie those to some pretty finite numbers and pretty finite language. And this is, I mean, really, if you, read it this way, it could go either way, either site plan we could approve tonight. And there's a mixture of data here that, I'd like to see one site plan and the requested variances spelled out in a quantitative fashion before we move on it.
Practically, that would be a little difficult at this point, also because the complete engineering hasn't been done, and I don't know. I think it would be a little hard to get an exact number like that at this point.
Okay. I guess just some kind of language that delineates between the east-west orientation and the north-south orientation.
Well, that could be conditioned to the site plan.
Yeah. It's just different from what we typically see, I guess is what I'm getting at.
And again, since the site plans have changed, even since, the initial, you can only vote on what's been advertised. So if I was specific in the advertising, we'd have to start all over. So I wanted to keep it as generic as possible to encompass any possibility. But, your motion can be as specific as you want.
Any other discussion?
I just want a clarification. So were we to approve the variance request as stated in our packet, that would give them the ability to do the east-west or the north-south?
The variance currently is for the east-west orientation because the east-west orientation does not require any variances for that particular part, for the practice field. It would be for those other 3 areas.
I have a question then. Why is it that the north edge of that practice field, which is drawn in the 75-foot impervious, I understand it's a field, but I also understand that 12-inch, 99-foot retaining wall would be impervious. So why is that not considered an encroachment there?
Well, technically, the wall is considered pervious.
It is considered pervious, I see. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rico?
The thing that concerns me, I understand what Mr. Chernick is asking for and saying the grading plan, we need this and how we have to understand it. But again, we're looking at such small acreages. And I just want to make sure everyone understands these facts, that the areas that are being asked to be disturbed are things normally that would get disturbed anyway. The road crossing where number 4 is, I'm not sure that's going to make a bit of difference, be it 0.4, 0.3, or whatever. It's going to pretty much be the same. Same thing with the little encroachment where the pedestrian crossing is by between 2 and 3. Again, part of that is also due to the requirement that we have another little thing because of the fire thing. I have to believe we can get this thing worked out. I'm a believer that time is money, and I think in essence we've got something that can be worked with. The staff, if the staff felt so strongly about this, that would have been a recommended condition. I didn't see that as being a recommended condition, so they felt confident. I want to say that the skills of Mr. Sanders and his staff are superb compared to Johns Creek. I think that I have a lot of trust in them to get things done and done very well. And as you heard my very first comment on this, I really wonder if Area 2 is really a stream that is not an ephemeral stream. I mean, just looking out there. And I want to work with all these folks, but at the same time, I just don't want to, put more delay for very little reason. And I really have faith in our staff that they can get these things worked out.
Yes, sir.
Just as a closing comment, deferring doesn't mean that denial. In my my concern is that the applicant, staff, and we all have the benefit of reviewing the topography impacts, the canopy impacts, which provide a great deal of screening for the retail shopping center that's behind this complex, as well as the water towers, which are currently very heavily screened by the heavily populated woods that are impacted by our decision of whether we go north-south or east-west on a practice field. So that's partly why I believe the stream buffer variance requires the applicant to present a topography as well as a forest and open area plan in their site plan. So I'm just looking for all of us to have that same benefit, so that when we look back on this, we have a site plan that, everyone understands, and we can make solid decisions based on that versus the manner in which it was conveyed to us tonight verbally. It was concerning.
Well,
I'm not making a criticism of staff at all by deferring. I think it's just helping us make better decisions.
Well, again, no disrespect to any of the board members. I'm not sure many of you could read and say, hey, let's change this or change that, and know how it would impact a design. And, the tree canopy, I think they pretty well showed to me that the north-south would have less impact on the canopy than the east-west without me putting a lot of time and effort in visualizing a new plan. I think I pretty much see what's out there. And like you, walking it, looking at it, I think I kind of understand the whole picture. I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, I missed a 12-inch tree here or whatever, but in general, I think, we have enough to work with, and I have faith in the staff. They haven't let me down yet. I want to say the staff did an excellent job on the elementary school that was built at Wood Road in Birmingham. There was no erosion problems. They did an exceedingly good job with that contractor, and I would have the same faith that the same staff would do the same thing at this site.
Any other discussion? Yes, no?
I have a question. Of the things that you've requested, most of that would be handled by staff in their planning, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And we
Which would provide an opportunity for staff to go through another review of those plans to give us more concrete feedback and direction, potential conditions based on that plan, which, as we heard, includes a piping of a stream 99 feet, 150-foot retaining wall, of which we have not had a chance to really digest.
But Angela said that the application before us is for the east-west, not the north-south. It would not apply to the north-south. Is that right?
As I understand, they may come and request it later, but what they have before you would not allow them to, the requested variances would not allow them to do the north-south, though they might be able to do that subsequently if they made the decision and got the Army Corps approval and all that straightened out.
The state variance and all that.
State waters there.
So, but let me go back, because I think you told me that what we were voting on tonight, as
It's the
stated, was
plan
the
before you.
east-west.
The other one, the north-south, is just to show you that there was an alternative considered.
So if we defer this and re-advertise, would the applicant have the opportunity to present their preferred north-south plan?
I believe so.
That's what I'm trying to help accomplish.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think the goal of the city is to provide the best site possible, although I understand that they want to show alternative, and that's part of their mandate to do that. But when I hear the school board saying the other is a preferred use, and, how they want the field to be, I'm listening very closely to that.
Well, and I'd like the public to have an opportunity to react to that plan as well, which they've just seen this east-west view.
You also heard the school board say that they would come back and present the north-south if they were able to get the other approvals. So I think, again, if we're looking at approving these 3 or 4 encroachments, and if they wanted to come back, they can ask for a revision. I guess I have to ask the staff if there's any time limit for coming back to revisit this on a different issue. So if they came back and asked for a variance, is there any problem with time limit? Can they come back within less than a year? Or would they have to wait a full year to be heard again?
Well, I think if you deny it, they have to wait 6 months. I did want to mention in terms of background, staff did not want to bring forward the north-south orientation until they had a state variance. So if they have to, if they choose to pursue that, that's going to, just so you know, that will delay the process further.
Right.
So I have a question maybe for the applicant. If this is approved as written tonight, what would motivate them to go back and get the state variant, try to get the state variance for the north-south? I mean, they would be approved and on their way. So I don't see why they would go and do that.
I think the timeline is a big factor right now. You can think one of the residents spoke about the SPLOST money. They need to get a permit and get started. They could take practice field off altogether of the LDP, start work on everything but that, and then just kind of handle that practice field on its own. So I mean, they have the right to do that, you know, go for a revision, but.
So if we wanted to leave the door open, which I'm hearing some of us are interested in doing, for them to do the north-south, could you recommend that we not put it to a site plan? Or how would you recommend we do
Well,
that?
I think you're safe in doing it to the site plan, because remember, this practice field as it's shown now does not require any variances. So for them to do the north-south orientation, you're going to have to come back and ask for a new set of variances.
Any other questions for staff? Let's vote on the motion on the floor to defer V09-019 for 30 days to allow the applicant time to offer the north side plan with topo as part of the plan. And delineation of forest and open area. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed, please raise your right hand. Motion failed 4-3. We will entertain another motion at this time if anybody would like to make one.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion for approval of V09-019 to allow the encroachments as shown on the plan prepared by Chapman, Griffin, Lanier, Schuschbach, architects, dated 2/3/2010, showing stream and wetlands drawing. This is to allow the stream bank encroachments of 0.01 acres in the 50-foot stream buffer, 0.12 acres in the 75-foot stream buffer, and also to condition that the applicant shall provide a stub for the future driveway leading to Highway 9 as shown on the plans. The applicant shall provide a 4-foot board black horse fence along the frontage of Cogburn Road and Bethany Bend. Number 3, all retaining walls shall be faced with or constructed of stone, brick, or decorative concrete modular block. If any retaining wall equals or exceeds 3 feet in height, a continuous green, evergreen planting shall be required adjacent to it, provided it is not within the stream. And then lastly, to provide a survey of all the hydrology ponds and lakes within 1,500 feet downstream of this site to determine the existing bottom of those structures, and have the school board certify that those elevations shall be the same after construction or no longer than 1 year from the date of its initial certificate of occupancy. The purpose of that is to be sure that we don't have silt running downstream, and that silt, if it does run downstream, that they're going to be responsible for excavating it.
Do we have a second?
Second for discussion.
Can you hand me your things? floor is open for discussion.
Well, I didn't hear you condition that on the site plan. Is that intentional?
The site plan, I did mention what I referenced.
I heard the encroachment numbers, but not a specific orientation or anything like that. So as long as they satisfy those conditions, they can work on it.
I basically cited it to their Chapman, Griffin, Lanier, Schuschbach Architects, stream and wetlands drawing dated 2/3/2010. And that's how I referenced it. And I don't know how else to do it unless they want to give me a project number and design page or something, but I'm going basically on this plan that we've got in front of us. It does show the field is east-west. I'm willing to go with that for the time being. If they want to come back and revise it later, let them come back and revise it later.
There's a project number.
I have a question.
That's the only thing I could use.
Will they not be required to present a bond?
Or,
Well, he's concerned about the erosion downstream. Will they not be presenting a bond for
The problem with
address any of that?
there will be an erosion control bond.
only if there's violations, typically. Only, the director said only if there's violations. Then that's kind of a special case kind of thing.
The problem we had at the Johns Creek site, just so I can enlighten you, we did have some lakes impacted downstream, but since no one had an idea of what those bottoms were, nobody could say that they were at fault. And what I'm thinking is we do the survey initially, that way we know what it is, and that way if the end of the project is surveyed again and it's shown that there is a good bit of silt or sediment in those structures, that they'd be responsible for excavating it. And we had some issues where, you know, this is a further assurance. There's nothing that the city has code-wise that could require that, and that's why I'm thinking conditionally doing this. 64 acres of potentially open ground. Anything can happen, and accidents happen. It's happened on my own sites. And we just have to man up to it and say, okay, we have a problem, let's go fix it, and let's correct it.
Well, we do only have a certain amount of budget that they're dealing with, so, and how expensive.
It's nowhere near as expensive as the impact it has to the homeowners downstream that have no money to fix the problem. And that's what I'm looking at, is saying that they are the ones who caused it, so they should be the ones who fix it. So this is something that I've done in other sites, and I think it's worked real well. And again, you know, I don't know what else to do. I'm trying to come up with something that may work better, but I'll be glad to entertain other discussion of other things. I'm just trying to say, how do we make sure that erosion doesn't become an issue for the folks downstream? And I am concerned. The beauty of it is this site has a lake. Before the water leaves the site, that all the water is going to go into the lake. So hopefully, if they do a good job, they'll silt their own lake up and won't silt folks downstream. And, you know, with all honesty, that's maybe what will happen, in which case it won't impact folks downstream. But I think this may be a possible solution.
Does staff have any input on that condition?
Well, in conference here with the council, it appears that actually marking and setting spot elevations for those bottoms is probably a reasonable request. However, the requirement to then go back and clean them out would be the purview of actually the judge, or we would have to, that would just set the stage for us to go out and cite and then fine and take it to court. The judge would have to make the requirement for us to clean it, or for the developer to clean it out.
So we would need to alter your amendment.
And that's fine. I again, you throw the balloon up and you see how far it floats. And if it doesn't get very far, then that's fine.
Any other discussion?
So would you like to restate that? Withdraw that and restate it?
Well, I think I've got to do
Gotta withdraw it.
withdraw it and then.
You can amend the motion to new language for that last condition that you stated. If you'd like to restate the last condition.
If you want to amend it, write it down as you amend it.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Mr. Kilgore?
Mr. Recook, I have a question. On your second condition, I wasn't clear on whether you were correcting yourself or whether you meant to say a 4-foot four-board fence. Did you just misspeak there?
Yeah,
If you did,
I
I'll
wanted to
make
say
sure
a
the record-
four-board black horse
I
fence.
thought that's what you meant.
And the reason I said that is there's now a fence that doesn't have to be painted, that could be plastic. And I intentionally did that because not all fence has to be painted. And I felt like there was a superior product in the PVC area.
I'm only asking about the 4-foot,
Oh, okay.
because that was read into the record.
And
I
you're
don't
right,
have a
the
4-foot
4-foot
fence out there.
Okay.
And I assumed that's what you did.
I meant
That's not
4-board.
what you meant, but you were
But,
correcting yourself, so you read it.
yeah, I'm sorry, I'll correct that as well, if that's okay. I'll amend that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question on the third condition, which was regarding the retaining walls. Did you read in the full recommended condition from staff, including the replanting?
I did, and I did add the word except within areas of streams. In other words, and maybe I want to just clarify, it's the upstream side of the stream. In other words, what I don't want to do is have evergreens planted on the upstream side that's going to get flooded by it being in a detention pond.
Why don't you reword your whole motion?
Okay.
Yeah, I think-
We'll wait.
We'll wait for you to.
So I guess, can I ask one?
Absolutely, you can.
So you did strike the language painted black and.
I did.
Say that, why you did that. one.
Okay. I struck the painted black because I think they want it dark colored, but it doesn't necessarily have to be painted black. It could be a black PVC fence. So I want to give it an option that they have an ability to do whatever as long as it's black.
Okay, so you did include black.
Absolutely, but I did not.
As you
Sorry, I wasn't clear.
restate, you may want to consider that the northwest overlay is requiring this, and since this property is bordered on 3 sides, that's why this request was made by staff to have it painted black, so it's consistent with the rest of the northwest Fulton overlay. So as you restate your whole motion,
It doesn't mention overlay here. I mean, what do I?
that's the rationale for having that requirement.
Well, I understand, but am I not saying that by reading what I just?
The northwest Fulton overlay doesn't want a plastic fence,
No PCB.
no PVC fence.
Well, I'm not saying they have to put PVC fence, am I?
You're leaving it
You're
open.
You're leaving it open.
Yeah,
Correct.
the
I'm not
requirement
saying
is-
it's
This
plastic.
is the requirement for the overlay, 4-board horse fence painted black, just as it's written.
Okay.
Wooded horse fence, how's that?
I mean, I
Or
don't.
stain.
I don't see what the difference of why it couldn't be.
Some of us do.
Excuse me.
Some of us do.
Okay. Well, I
Just leave it the way it is and rewrite it.
That's the overlay.
As we're waiting for Mr. Recook, any additional questions or discussion? I guess discussion only.
Actually, a question for staff, if I could. Mr.
Go right
Chair.
ahead.
Per Mr. Sanders' comments, I'll let you read them, and you can read them as well as I can, but the conditions that, or the issues that he raises prior to permitting, the applicant must demonstrate that impact has been mitigated, et cetera, is that, we don't necessarily need to condition that, that's part of normal due procedure, is that right?
Yeah, I can go through these. It's my understanding, I'm not the expert, but it's my understanding, basically, he has to show, he'll do a hydrology report.
Right.
And he has to show what the water runoff is prior to construction, he has to show what the runoff is after, and the difference is what he has to mitigate. And he has to show that mitigation on the LDP. So, I mean, that's standard, and so I just didn't feel it was
Okay.
necessary to reiterate it.
And how about the tree remediation plan? Is that something standard that the arborist would be?
Yes, they have been talking to the arborist, going back and forth. I know, as he said, any specimen trees will be remediated for. I mean, as far as I know, they're going to meet all of their tree requirements.
Would you second that? Okay. And the other one, prior to permitting, applicant must adjust impact areas on plan to include all disturbances and provide a barrier, such as a temporary chain link fence to entry into the protected areas. Is that something that the my colleague would entertain. Since, I mean, you mentioned how staff's very diligent and I think you appreciated their efforts.
Which one was that?
But I
Ken?
think we
Jimmy
just wanted to miss
Sanders,
that one.
point 3, page 6.
And I think it just goes back to the fact that we're looking at an architectural site plan, not a civil plan. And so some of these impact areas aren't necessarily spelled out in such detail.
Again, I have no problem, John. I mean, that's something we need to make a motion to say, making a friendly amendment or something, I guess.
Or you
that's-
can remove your motion and then restate it.
Okay.
Withdrawing.
All right, I would like to withdraw my motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Okay.
Mr. Reedcook, would you like to make another?
I would like to make a motion to approve petition number V09-19 for the allowance to encroach into the 50-foot stream buffer and to allow encroachment into the 75-foot impervious setback as shown on plans prepared by Chapman, Griffin, Lanier, and Subach Architects for the Bethany Road High School Stream and Wetlands Drawing, project number 08002, dated 2/3/2010, and to be conditioned by: 1, prior to permitting, applicant must adjust impact areas on the plan to include all disturbances and provide a barrier such as a temporary chain link fence to entry into the protected areas. Number 2, applicant shall provide stub for the future drive leading to Highway 9 as shown on the plans. Number 3, applicant shall provide a 4-board horse fence painted black along the frontage of Cogburn Road and Bethany Bend. 4, all retaining walls shall be faced with or constructed of stone, brick, or decorative concrete modular block. If any retaining wall equals or exceeds 3 feet in height, a continuous evergreen plantings shall be required adjacent to it, except in upstream sides of walls into detention ponds or water quality ponds. And then lastly, survey all detention ponds, streams, and lakes 1,500 feet downstream of this site to determine the exact bottom of these items.
Second.
Discussion. Well, let me have that. I just need one piece of paper. Thank you.
Well, he did have it right here.
I wrote that.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, if I may?
Sure.
My concern, as I stated earlier, but I'm going to restate in a different manner, so maybe my point gets across. The school board has indicated their preference is the north-south. If they would present to us a site plan with the north-south, we could hold them to that, and therefore perhaps mitigate some of the impact to the environment, specifically to the trees. Without having that site plan in front of us, we lose the ability to specify that, and therefore leave it entirely up to the school board to choose whichever is to their convenience. So since I have concerns that we don't have the topography and the forestry noted on here, we lose that ability as a board to do what's in the best interest, what I believe is in the best interest of the public, and to also understand that removing of a significant amount of trees could potentially have a greater impact to our streams, because you lose that tree canopy. So, again, that's why I just prefer, as the stream buffer variance requests, that we have a topo, forest, and open area clearly stated in the plan. And you know what, there may be other areas that we, as a board and the applicant, views may need more encroachment based on the civil plans, including the track area, which looks like the track goes right to a drop-off, of which a retaining wall drop-off that I have no idea how much that drop-off is. Is it 3 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet? And without having a topo, we cannot make that determination. In fact, there may be more encroachment that's required there because of the wetlands. So I'm just trying to do what's in the best interest.
Todd,
and
I
having
understand.
a clear
My,
plan.
my problem is, I just want them to move along. If they want to come back with north-south, they're going to apply for another variance.
Again, but
And
it's
when
if.
they do that.
It's
that-
if they want to.
If they want to, and if they do that, we'll ask, and they hear it loud and clear, they'll have all these other plans in front of us, don't come in, and let's get this thing moving, so. But I understand exactly, I just have faith in our staff, that they can figure it out.
Is there any way we can get an answer to this from someone in the audience? Whether they will go back?
Would the applicant please step forward one more time?
One potential way that we could have influence over the practice field is denying the specific variance request at the sidewalk for the bridge, which would then force them to come back specifically on that area. It allows them to move forward with the rest of their plan, as they've indicated they prefer to do. But if we denied that specific encroachment, it would force them to come back with a variance request on that practice field.
I don't think that's one of the encroachments.
Says 577 square feet, 0.02 acres.
That little bit on the driveway?
Yeah, it's a
Side-
sidewalk.
Okay, that one. I was looking at the bridge, because the bridge is okay.
Go ahead and ask me the question.
Could you answer our question about whether you will go back and try to reorient the practice field to your preferred north-south and apply with the EPD for whatever mitigation you
Absolutely.
need?
The things that have been brought up, first of all, the school system wants to go north and south. We thought we were trying to comply with the city's request. Second of all, it would cost obviously more money, have more impact on the environment, which the school system does not want to do in the east-west direction, but was only submitting that. We will come back. We will provide the surveys you requested. No issue with that at all. And as a school board, most of the requirements for downstream bonds and those sorts of things are when a developer just wants to come in, do something, and leave, and the city doesn't have it. The school system's not going away. And that's the reason that they did all the work at Johns Creek, is because they're here and they're going to do that. They don't bond because they're self-insured. So there is no reason why, after that survey is done, if there's any problems at all, that the school system wouldn't be required to address that. So yes, we will come back, but one of the biggest concerns, and I understand the environmental concerns and the topography requirements, is this school needs 2 years to be built. And if in fact we delay the school piece, we would then lose the opportunity. The school system would have to vote on accelerating the construction, which again would have a significant impact. So we're asking that if you would approve this site, we will come back with the north-south orientation and the required topography that you're requesting.
So we can make
For the record.
conditions to granting of the variance if we chose.
I take the man at his word. I think they want to do the right thing, which is.
I mean, put it in there.
Yeah, put it in there.
Well, we can amend to put it in.
Okay.
Go ahead.
While we have the applicant, can I ask him the questions about drop-off?
Absolutely.
Can you address the elevation change at the road as well as at the track? What elevation change should we expect with those retaining walls?
At the edge of the track, I'm trying to recall the exact drop. The drawings have been done for this already. They do exist, and they have been submitted to the city of Milton. I believe it's about a 12-foot drop.
So will that be fenced all the way around the edge of the track?
Yes, you would have a fence around the retaining wall at the edge of the track.
Right at the edge of the track? I mean, what?
Yes, I mean that we would put it at the edge of the track whether there was a retaining wall or not. But You'll have a runoff area.
That-
The runner will not be right.
That's what I'm getting at, okay. So what's the runoff area?
If
It's
I
another
may,
lane, it's about 2'6", something like that.
if I may, Angela's going to get the plans, so you'll have something to look at.
The state of Georgia athletic requirements are clear on how far away any obstructions have to be.
So we have a 12-foot there, and then what was at the road?
If Angela is getting the drawings, I would actually prefer to get the actual dimensions from the drawings.
Good for you.
Does it matter? Does it really matter?
We have completed those topographies. We have done all the hydrology, and that has been submitted. And I understand your concerns, but the staff does have that information.
Does it matter
I'm not designing, I just want to see it.
if it's 12 or 15 or 20?
To me, it's important. I mean, it's why it's required.
And we'll sit here.
And if it was 12 foot versus 15 or 6 versus,
It gives me a better indication of what sort of impact there is to that area with equipment. Is it going to be put in by hand, or is it going to be put in with dozers? Has a significant difference in impact to the stream bank.
and you saw where they're going to fix the stream by removing walls and putting less impact.
I have a question for the applicant. To move forward tonight versus a 30-day deferral, what exactly would you need? Give me your wording.
We have submitted our documents. Actually, we were here a month ago submitting the north-south orientation of the plan. We were told by staff to consider an east-west orientation, and that's what sent us on this course. We have submitted our documents. They're in the city's office right now with a north-south orientation with all topography completed for that field. But what we're being told is we cannot receive a land disturbance permit when there are encroachments in the stream buffers. So that's why we're asking for this board's approval to allow these 4 encroachments that we've discussed. Which really have nothing to do with the play field, the practice field. Does that confuse things anymore?
Well, just understand what the staff asked you to do is what you're required to do. You're required to provide an alternate plan. That's required in the stream buffer variance. So what you did is provided an alternate plan. The problem is it wasn't clear to us what your preferred plan really was. And therefore, we don't have the preferred plan in front of us to review. So you did the right thing, the staff actually did the right thing, it's just we don't have the right documentation in front of us.
So, to restate, you would need more of a generic variance, not specific to the number of acres, to have alternative plans.
Everything the way that the motion is presented is acceptable, and it works and will allow us to get our project moving forward.
But remember, we've limited to the number of acres. And one says .43 north-south, and the other is .13 east-west.
We've submitted for the east-west orientation. If we are allowed to come back, if you give us the approval of these variances, these encroachments, then we're able to move forward with the plan as is. We will come back next month with a new orientation, north-south again, and request approval for those encroachments at that time. But those would be separate encroachments, not to be confused with the ones we're asking now.
So even if we limit it to 1.3, you're fine with that, which is the east-west?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You mean .03, right?
Yes, whatever I said, you know.
113.
I mean, what I heard is delaying this 30 days for us to rehear it is not going to affect this SPLOST funding. It takes 2 years to build it. It's March of 2010. The SPLOST goes to June 2012. So 1 month doesn't seem like it's, and if it is a deal breaker, I don't know why we didn't hear the case last month as scheduled, but.
We tried to submit last month, and the reason is that when you start with the construction completion, we have to open the school at a certain time, back up the amount of time it takes to build the facilities and open that up. you have to have it out of the street for 30 days in accordance with House Bill 1079, which is the state tax requirements on protecting the taxpayers' dollars. And you back up the amount of time it takes to put it through the contracting department. It says that we need to be awarded in May. We can't do that if we don't have approval tonight. We will slip it that 30 days. We have to go to the board at a certain structured time. They do provide us to come in between the pre-board and the board, but with those exceptions, we just can't get everything completed, the design, the permits, and on the street for the 30 days required to have an award by May, which then would require us to award in June. And then to open the school and enough time to put in all the furniture and the things, we can't give them 24 months. We'd have to back up to 22 months or whatever we would require. That then requires us to go with an acceleration to try to get it back to the preferred date so that they can move the furniture and the students in. So a 30-day delay would result in an accelerated construction schedule.
Are you anticipating this core request with the state to put a wrinkle in your plans for the north-south orientation?
No, what we're trying to do is get a permit to build the school building.
So you can award the
practice field
contract
can go
without
on a-
that?
It can go on a separate track. That's why we agreed to go ahead and turn the practice field east and west, get everything approved, get a we need a land disturbance permit before we can get a building permit.
Sure.
Everything has to be in order. In order to do that, we need to get approval for these encroachments. We will address the practice field. That can be on a different schedule.
If I can speak for my fellow board members, I think we're here to try and find consensus and to try and find a compromise so that they can drive on. It sounds like the unfortunate circumstances that their critical path runs through a very slight encroachment into a couple of stream buffers. And if we can find a way to let them move ahead, because let's face it, they will move ahead. I think we should try and do that. However, as my colleague Mr. Chernick has stated, I don't think that we have the plan in front of us that's mutually beneficial for us, the school board, the developer, and the citizens. And so I'd like to have that information in front of us so we can make a wise decision and tie it to some specifics. So I'm not sure exactly how it should sound, but I would like for them to go ahead and seek that land disturbance permit, but with them, the contingency of them moving forward on the project, but to see us again so that we can readdress this and tailor these specific variance requests to numbers and to a site plan.
John, that's exactly what he said. He said, if you approve what I asked for, they can get started, and they will come back and bring us what we need for being it reviewed in the north-south direction, if that's what they want.
Well, your language tied them to a site plan that they're not seeking.
But he said that was
Right,
okay.
but they told us they're going to come
We
back.
can bind them to that. That's all we're asking.
Do you need this to move forward with any other permit with the state or the Corps? I can't remember where you're at with those.
Do you have the plans?
Sorry.
Do you have the plans?
Yes,
North-south?
right here.
We are told that we cannot get our land disturbance permit from the city of Milton until these variances are approved.
I understand that. But what about with the state or the Corps?
No,
You don't
that's a
need this.
separate.
I did want to add, staff has received direction that we won't bring back, if they do decide to seek the north-south orientation, we won't bring that back to you until they get their state variance. So,
And that makes sense. That's what you've done in the past.
right.
This one here, do you, can you see?
Any other discussion?
I'm done. They're going to come back.
Is it 11:09? I can't see.
You all can have a seat. Thank you so very much.
I don't think it matters how strong it is, does it?
No. Sorry, we gave the big ones back.
They are strong. So, That's what we said, though. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, it didn't get us very much.
We have a motion on the floor, and it is to approve V09-019 to allow encroachment into the 50-foot stream buffer, to allow encroachment in the 75-foot impervious setback in relationship to the plan dated February 3rd, 2010, project number 08002.
Before you read all that, I was going to offer an amendment.
I said 3 times any other
Oh, I was
discussion.
looking at it with her.
Amendment's not further discussion.
You have to do, this was already presented, right?
Yeah, I just want to offer an amendment.
A friendly amendment?
Mhm.
Can we state this and then you offer it?
Well, that's what I thought would help them by not having, all right.
Limited to a total of 0.13 acres with the following conditions. Number 1, prior to permitting, applicant must adjust impact areas on plan to include all disturbances and provide a barrier, such as a temporary chain link fence, to entry into the protected areas. Number 2, applicant shall provide stub for future drive leading to Highway 9 as shown on plans. Number 3, applicant shall provide 4-board horse fence painted black along the frontages of Cogburn Road and Bethany Bend. Number 4, all retaining walls shall be faced with or constructed of stone, brick, or decorative concrete modular block. If any retaining wall equals or exceeds 3 feet in height, a continuous evergreen planting should be required adjacent to it, except in detention ponds or water quality ponds. And number 5, survey all detention ponds, streams, and lakes of 1,500 feet downstream to determine existing bottoms.
Second.
Discussion.
The amendment, and perhaps the rest of the board can help me with this, the amendment that I was looking for was specific to the practice fields, having something into the record, not gentlemen's agreements, which this board has never been keen to. And my thought is the easiest way to achieve that is to amend by denying the variance request for the .02 acre intrusion for the bridge leading to the practice field, which would thereby require them to come back with a revised plan specific to the practice field.
Just to remind the board, if there is a denial, that would limit the time when they can come back.
Okay, that's a good point. So can we defer that specific decision?
Can't you just request?
Or is there another way that we can bind them to bringing back a north-south plan?
Can we just request them to come back?
I don't think you can bind them to require to change the plan. If they decide they don't want to change the plan, they don't have
That's
to
what I'm
change the
concerned
plan.
about.
Let me just say this. If they don't get the state stream buffer, guess what they're going to do?
Right.
They're going to come back with the east-west plan. Nothing different than what you're seeing now. If they can get the state buffer, then I'll bet you they will come back to us and show it to us. So, again, saying they have to come back, I'm not sure they have to come back if they don't get the state buffer. And in my opinion, I'm fine with what they've got if they want to go with the east-west. The only thing is they want to go north-south, they're going to have to come back. And if they got to come back, they'll bring us all the stuff they need to, and we'll see them again. I don't want to over-condition people. The system works, and they'll come back.
Mr. Kilgore?
I would say that, number one, I don't think there's any way we can force them to come back.
Right.
Number two, I think they are motivated to come back. They've stated that it's significantly more expensive to do it this way.
Correct.
They
Good
want
point.
to do it the other way. And I think money is the motivating factor, as well as other, east-west is better. It's what the school board has requested. I think the only reason they even provided this is because we told them they had to.
Do we have a second?
I think they're planning to do the.
Do we have
Well,
a
I haven't actually, I'm kind of socializing
Yeah, we really haven't had a second.
a motion.
That's
You
what
guys
I-
having a motion is really the issue.
Well, this is part of the dialogue, come up with one that would, is there an option?
If we don't get a second.
It would be an interpretation. I think what you would need to do, I don't think you can defer a portion of it. You would vote on a motion to approve or deny, and you approve a portion of it, and whatever was not approved would be deemed denied.
Can we condition them to come back with a north-south plan?
No.
Can't. Okay.
Is there a second on the friendly
Well, I
amendment?
haven't amended it.
He's really just trying to.
I'm trying to come up with one. I can't support that. Take a vote.
If there's not a
Did you-
second,
did
there's
you-
no vote.
There's
Did
no-
you make
If you
a
haven't
motion?
made, if you haven't
No,
made a
I
motion.
haven't made an
You
amendment.
didn't
Okay.
call for a
All
vote?
in favor
I'm
of
just
approval
exploring it.
of V09-019 as stated previously, please raise your right hand. All opposed, please raise your right hand. Let it be known that it passed 5-2. That brings us to our next case, V10-001. Angela, will you please present?
Oh, that's yours.
Angela, he's going to take his zip drive.
We need to.
Petition number B10-001. Address 13695 Highway 9, requested variance to allow reduction in the required number of parking spaces for a church. Background. The site is a 24,350 square foot, 350,000 square foot commercial center known as the Legacy Crossing Pavilion, located on 2.73 acres. Fronting Highway 9, the property is zoned C1 and is located in the Highway 9 overlay. Currently, the subject building consists of a 4,524 square foot restaurant, Montana's Bar and Grill, and a 9,783 square foot vacant commercial space formerly occupied by Dollar General. The other building on the property consists of 4 in-line tenant spaces, including a hair salon, a takeout pizza shop, and a dry cleaners. 1 space is currently vacant. The applicant, Steve Bullen, is the senior minister with the Christian City Church, currently located in Roswell, Georgia. The church currently has about 150 members. Minister Bullen plans to lease Suite 107 to use as the new location for his church. The main assembly area for the space will be approximately 2,000 square feet, seating 130 people. The rest of the space will include 4 classrooms. Article 8, Section 64, 1410 states that churches without fixed seating require one parking space per 30 square feet in the largest assembly area. Per this requirement, the church is required to provide 67 parking spaces. The remaining restaurant and commercial spaces require 76 spaces, resulting in a total of 124 spaces for the entire commercial center. Currently, the center provides 105 parking spaces, 19 short of the ordinance's requirement. Minister Bullen is asking for a reduction in the required number of parking spaces for a church from 67 to 48 spaces. He states that the mix of uses in the center will support a parking reduction, since most businesses will be closed during the time that the church is holding services. Sunday morning services start at 10:30 and ends around 12:30. At this time, there are no formal weekday services or programs. According to the Transportation Demand Management Encyclopedia, peak use occupancy rates for a restaurant are Monday through Friday from 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 6 p.m. through 12 a.m. The restaurant is the main traffic generator in the center. Its parking needs should not be hindered by the church services, according to the current schedule. Staff notes that this commercial center is not eligible for a formal shared parking agreement. The ordinance requires that approval be reflected in the conditions of zoning for each such property. However, the applicant has stated that the adjoining properties, a vet clinic and a tire store, will both allow the church to park any overflow vehicles on their property. The staff would like to note that the applicant has provided a copy of a letter from the owner of the tire store giving him approval to park overflow cars on their property. DRB courtesy review. On February 2nd, 2010, the Design Review Board reviewed the applicant's petition and offered the following comments. No aesthetic changes to site. The board asked if the church will hold any other programs during the week. A board member suggested the possibility of conditioning the variance to the time of use. Another suggestion was that a traffic engineer will be worth its weight in gold. He may be able to provide valuable information on time of use numbers. The staff held a focus meeting on February 1st, 2009, at which the following 2010, at which the following comments were provided. Building plan review, site plan review, arborist, and DOT all had no issues. Standards for consideration. The approval of a variance is based on the following considerations. Relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. There are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to size, shape, or topography, or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. Relief, if granted, would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties, and that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured, and that substantial justice is done. The applicant addresses the considerations as follows. Enforcement of the existing code prevents the premises use as a place of assembly and thus, by virtue, unusable by the applicant, limiting the applicant's ability to conduct and sustain a community service of this nature. Relief if granted would be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning resolution, as it will not create an unsafe traffic situation. Relief, if granted, would not cause substantial detriment to the public good or impair the purpose or intent of the zoning ordinance, as the request would result in a balanced and proportional use of the available parking area due to the applicant's primary time for assembly being Sunday mornings and concluding prior to other tenants opening. The community at large will not be adversely affected by the approval of the requested variance. The variance, as requested, will not restrict access by the community to other businesses in the development, nor will it cause dangerous traffic flow on the development. Therefore, this application for variance is entirely appropriate. Recommended conditions. Should the board choose to approve this application, staff recommends the following conditions. Staff has no conditions at this time. And this concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for staff from the board? Mr. Ricard?
On the letters that you have from the adjoining owners, do you actually have those letters?
Yes.
And are those letters from the actual owner or the lessees of those buildings?
Well, the letter is from the property owner of the Tire 9.
Okay. But that doesn't mean he's the property owner. That means he's the owner of the business, or am I being too technical?
It says business name. The applicant may be able to clarify that.
Okay. And then the other location, there's two locations. One was the tire.
The other was a vet.
The other one was the vet clinic. I believe the applicant has been in contact with them, but I don't have a letter from them at this time.
Okay, and do I understand that Montana's Grill's still going to be in use as well as the other ones? It's just a matter of during those time intervals where the thing would be okay?
Yeah, as the schedule is right now, they'll be in and out before the restaurant opens.
Angel?
Mr. Chernick?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Would there be a difference in the amount of parking spaces required if they had seating that was permanent, I think was?
I believe so. That's what I thought it was at first. Oh, let me check.
My question is related to Marcia's, and I couldn't find the actual Article 8, Section 64 in my binder.
That's the new codified version. So let me.
Perhaps, if it's short enough, can we read that scope and intent section?
Okay.
Normally they're like one small
We
paragraph.
know how much you like Montana.
What's that?
We know how much you like Montana.
While we're working that, I've got a question for the attorney. You can answer pretty quickly. In the background, it says that the applicant plans to lease this space. I'm assuming that we can make this approval if we choose to do so conditional upon this applicant and this applicant only. Is that right?
Your application would be with respect to property, the use of the property, wouldn't be.
So any future tenant could
make use of the variant, of the variance, the parking space variance, they would be able to make use of the parking space variance.
Can we condition it to a certain length of time? Hard on that. Because I'm sure the church is going to outgrow this facility and they'll have to move to a much bigger facility.
Or they'll need more
At
parking
least
spaces.
that's their hope, and I would hope.
The other question,
to the church use.
in a different nature of a kind of the same question, is can we condition it to the time of day? If this variance request is valid, because it's, I only asked because it's a request that was made by one of our fellow boards. That this variance request is only valid until 1 p.m.
It's going to enforce it.
I'm just asking because the other board asked us to do it. So
Just discussion.
we got to do our due diligence.
Let me take a look at the order. As a practical and as a legal question, I might have different responses, but let me take in order to answer the legal question, let me look at the ordinance again.
So how many total parking spaces?
So to answer your question.
And Marcia's?
And Marcia's.
Permanent seating and.
So the specific use group that we took this from was churches and other places of worship without fixed seating. Churches, cathedrals, temples. And that is 1 per 30 square feet in the largest assembly area. There is one, we don't have one for churches with fixed seating for whatever reason. We've got an assembly place with fixed seating, but I think that's more for stadiums, auditoriums, that sort of thing. So since it directly talks about churches, that's the one we went with.
Okay, thank you.
Were you at the focus meeting?
The DRB or the staff focus meeting? Yes.
Did DOT discuss the issue of mass exodus out of one? Because typically a place like this, is people are coming and going onesie-twosie, and you're going to have a lot of people spilling out onto Highway 9.
There's a large church about a half mile away also.
Yeah, and maybe this is not even appropriate, but I was just curious if that was discussed and if that's an issue that was not discussed.
I mean, typically, it's been my experience, the church, if they feel they need help, kind of contacts appropriate departments for that.
Good traffic assistance.
Mr. McCray, as I read the ordinance, it requires that the use shall be served by off-street parking spaces. I don't know that that's time designated. It doesn't become a parking space and then leave as a parking space. So so they need to be.
So the time of day constraint cannot be imposed by the board.
It's something that you can consider as a factor in whether a variance is appropriate.
Right.
But if you looked at it that way, then they wouldn't be getting a variance. You'd just be interpreting the ordinance differently than it says. I think.
How about Mr. Recook's question?
Which
one?
You were talking about
maybe 1 or 2 years, something 3 years, to make it a time situation, because again, my hope, and I'm sure the church's hope, is in 2 or 3 years that they're going to be outgrowing this facility, and either they're going to buy Montanas and offer drinks as well as religion, or find a new facility.
So my concern with that, first of all, is we're dealing with church, and it's a condition that I wouldn't find on many other social assemblies.
Okay.
Our loop of concerns, and I would be very, very hesitant to add additional limitations on such a variance that we're granting to a religious organization. That being said, I also my concern is that you would removal of a variance. I would prefer to have done as a matter of a board decision under certain conditions at a time, rather than guessing whether or not this church will be present 5 years from now. If it sunsets, then they're going to have to come back in again. And again, that's something I would rather not force upon them.
So you're not saying it's illegal, you're just saying you'd rather not?
Because as a general statement, I'm saying there's question is interpretation. With respect to a church, I would advise you not to add an additional limitation that isn't imposed on other assemblies.
I understand.
Mr. Attorney?
And just to clarify, granting this variance request would apply to this applicant and any future applicants or any future
For this
leases
use.
of this space.
As a church?
For this use.
For this use. Okay.
Synagogue.
It's a moot
or
point,
whatever.
because if it was a retail space, they wouldn't have to have the variance in the first place.
It would be calculated differently. I don't know. It depends.
Yeah.
They may meet it, they may not
For
meet
this
it. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the staff? Will the applicant please come forward and present? If you would, state your name and address, please. Just
Good evening. My name's Steve Bullen. I live at 219 Flying Waterway, Woodstock, Georgia. And it's good to be here tonight. Thank you for your time. And did you have questions that you wanted me to answer? You want me to present something?
please.
Sure. I guess, for us here, this is important. We really appreciate the board considering this. We nearly snuck in actually under the 10% revision, and I think we may have if we had had fixed seating. The 10% administrative parking variance. But we have reduced the size of the auditorium to 2,000 square feet, which limits the ratios to the parkings that we've got detailed in the submittal. And I feel like this will be a great opportunity for the community. I think the church will be a benefit. Given the times of operation, I think there won't even be a bump in the road. The tenants that are located in the development now are very enthusiastic, I think, from a business perspective. Domino's pizzas. The teenagers are excited about Domino's. Domino's excited about the teenagers in the church. And Montana's, certainly they'll get some business after church, I'm sure. And appreciate your comments on that. And so I think, there's generally a good community, a goodwill in the community right there, at least. Tires 9 next door is enthusiastic. They actually offered up right from the start, the shared parking opportunity. Honestly, right now I think we're a small church. Of course, the idea is to grow. We plan to grow. We have a potential lease option on the place. Right now at 41 months. I think we have the option out there for 7 and 9 years, 2 options consecutively. I would hope that we wouldn't be using those 2 options, or if we do, that we'd actually be purchasing the place as a whole and working out a different arrangement, I guess. So our plan, like you said, is pretty much to grow and purchase some land and do it right moving forward. So with that being said, I guess I just want to respectfully have this considered without restriction on business hours of operation. Sorry.
Questions for the applicant?
Are you planning to put any kind of school or education facility someday in this facility? Because I know there might be a conflict with a business license or pouring license. Is that, I guess that's kind of a staff question, maybe more than you, but is that something you're thinking of someday?
At this stage, we have no plans for a preschool or a daycare or anything in that nature.
And would that be an issue to who gets permitted first? Is the Montana's allowed to continue because it's there first versus the school, getting them to be moved out?
I'm not sure about the school, but I know with the church itself, since the restaurant was there first, they're fine.
So they'll be fine at renewal as well?
Yes.
Are you planning to play any music outside after the hours of what time, after 11?
No plans at this stage.
10, okay.
What about a Wednesday night supper or?
Currently, we have Wednesday night connect groups, which is in people's homes. So it's kind of off-site.
So what are your anticipated hours of operation?
Sundays 10 o'clock till 11:30.
No Sunday evening, Wednesday, no Sunday evening, Wednesday?
Not currently, no.
Currently?
No plans for the Sunday night.
Now this says 10:30 to 12:30.
That's, yeah, and currently we're 10 till 11:30. So that might be a typo. My apologies if that's what was written there.
And you might have a special mass for Christmas or Easter or something like that that's earlier or later.
Yeah, and I think with those things that do come up, our desire is to work with our neighbours. I mean, if we're not friends with our community, then what kind of church is it going to be, really? So, if we're upsetting Montana's and his customers, then we're sending all the wrong messages. So
Maybe the other way around.
Yeah, and we're pretty easy to get along with, yeah. So I think I spoke to the veterinary clinic yesterday, and they were surprised to hear that one time we actually did a pet show. And I suggested that one time we may be able to work together with their customers and do some kind of event that would benefit their business and also be great for the community. So that's more of the nature of how we're probably going to roll moving forward. So.
And do you have, is the veterinarian that you have the letters from both a vet and a tire, are they the owners of the land or are they just
I don't, just to clarify, I have no letter from the veterinary currently, although I have spoken to them and they are enthusiastic.
Okay.
The tire place next door, it was actually the manager of 12 years who signed the letter.
Okay.
So I have no clue if he's the landowner. I think he's probably not, but he's the guy who runs the place for the last 12 years.
So what's the plan if you grow quicker than you think you're going to grow and you need more parking?
It would probably be an earlier service on a Sunday morning. Yeah, that would be the only way really forward. The facility, it only has 4 classrooms, 1 auditorium space. It's limiting. It's a limiting size, and I guess people will just get close. So I think maybe to answer your question, I think probably an earlier service.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes, sir.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your integration into the neighborhood. This is the first church I've ever seen that actually joins a bar. My colleague alluded to.
Thank you.
I'll spread the word to my Catholic friends. But, just a couple questions. Going forward, I know this is kind of what's on your plate right now. This is the first stumbling block that you came to, but in the packet it says that you're considering entering into the lease. How far along are you, and if we were to deny this, would this be a deal breaker for you?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've got pretty much everything in order, except for this. And this would be the contingency on signing the lease.
Okay. I guess some other variance requests that we see come before us quite often are related to signage. Have you thought about your signage package?
We've done some brief study on the City of Milton's signage requirements, 5% of building face, I believe.
Do you expect that that'll fit within your signage plans?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the location of that facility is really quite prominent.
Right.
And it's great exposure to Highway 9. So signage of any size, I think, is going to be effective. And again, signage is important, but really word of mouth is probably more our business.
Right. Okay, that's all I have.
Any other questions?
Is he from Australia?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? We will close the public comment.
Some loyal friends right there.
Sir, is there anything additional you'd like to say at all? You have this time to.
I'd just like to say thank you for your time. Thank you for potentially welcoming us into the community.
Thank you. Any questions for the staff?
Nine.
Nine.
Wayne. No.
Call for a motion. Mr. Kilgore, you look like you want to make one.
I do.
I'm not sure with how to get it in the requirements.
Scott, go ahead. Go ahead, Scott.
I'll move to approve petition number V10-001, the first petition of the year,
Based on,
to allow a reduction of, just not prepared for the motion, I apologize. I got roped into it. To allow a reduction in the required number of parking spaces for a church. Article 8, section 64.1410. On the basis that if this does not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance, which I believe is to ensure that we have adequate parking in our parking lots in the city of Milton, and because of the hours of operation of this request, that it would not conflict with the other businesses in the area, so it doesn't offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And I think that kind of leads into the extraordinary and exceptional situation, which again it's pretty much a Sunday morning situation. So I don't see it obviously as a substantial detriment to the public good. Surrounding properties, I think, are obviously on board, and the public safety, health, and welfare are all secured. And so I think it meets all four of the considerations that this board has found by our bylaws. So I see it as a win-win for the city and the applicant.
I second it.
Second.
Before you go, can you clarify the amount of the variance are you approving as requested?
As requested, yes.
19 additional spaces.
67 to 48.
Discussion?
Not to sound like a stick in the mud tonight. If this truly was just going to be 10:30 or 10 to 11:30 in the morning, then I could see that there's probably very little conflict. But should there be weekdays get-togethers, it's going to be smack in the middle of retail and smack in the middle of traffic. So without the ability to actually restrict hours of operation, that it does then impact the spirit and intent of the ordinance, and it doesn't meet the conditions of extraordinary and exceptional situations of the property. So, I'm wanting to do the right thing, but at the same time, thinking that this could be a viable operation for an hour and a half a week use seems questionable to me. Talking about funding a lease for 41 months and getting an hour and a half's use a week.
To kind of think about that, the majority of your parishioners would be on Sunday morning, and during the week it would be, fewer numbers, probably.
And they also said that they're doing most of their other stuff off-site.
Yeah.
In people's homes, which most churches
Home
are doing
church.
now.
And I'll also tell you, Todd, I've worked with 5 different churches in Roswell when I was over there. And every church who had problems with traffic somehow got shuttle buses started and started getting parking off-site, and a number of things started working. And the wonderful thing is, as he said about a church, if they want to be active in the community, they better be active by being the right character and doing things right. If they're going to upset the adjoining tenants, then they've got to figure out how to make it work.
Probably would be the other way around. In this situation, the other tenants would probably be more upsetting to the church.
And when they do, I would think the churches are typically pretty responsive. But in all honesty, I think that I very rarely had complaints from adjoining property owners. The only time I had it was on weddings when people took all their parking spots and they couldn't go for some certain events. But I think in general, people seem to work things out. And I have faith in them to do the right thing, and if not, then they'll probably not be
You'll
around.
go visit and check up on them.
Any other discussion? Mr. Kilgore?
Yep, I'll just make one other comment. I'll make it brief. I like you would like to condition it so that we could make it ironclad. I don't think there's a way we can do that legally in this case, and we kind of have to hold our gut on this one. And my gut tells me that I feel about 95% confident that our criteria is met. We can't lock it down 100%, but I think that's a close enough.
Any other discussion?
Just speaking of
The motion on the table is to approve V10-001 to allow a reduction in the required number of parking spaces for a church as requested, and that it meets the 4 criteria for approval of a variance from this board. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, raise your right hand. Let it be known that it passed 6-1. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Come visit.
Thank you.
There's a Methodist church here on Main Street that John and I go to that you guys have come up and check out one day. Okay. Thank you. Other business. We have one question. How did the minimum maximum thing go so far?
That has already been taken care of. I'm sorry, I didn't realize it has, but it's been changed, and we have the text amendment fixed and everything. So we did that.
Thank you, Marcia.
Back in the summer.
Thank you, Bob.
And the only other thing that I have is that on the letter that we received today from Kelly Himes Broley, she has every one of our email addresses, our personal email addresses. And I was just wondering how somebody got those.
Maybe public record.
Well, I doubt I'm not so sure it'd be that easy to get the 7 of us, but You know, she's even got Nancy's new one on here, and she's only, so I mean,
This was addressed to the mayor, so,
He forwarded it?
yeah.
Joe about it.
So, I mean, they're public record, but
Talk to him next time.
I believe she got them from the mayor's office.
because the other letter that we got went to you, and then you all forwarded it to us.
We would
If
prefer
if it
that.
goes to me, if somebody contacts me about corresponding with you, I'll try to get them to funnel everything through me, but if they go through the mayor's office.
But the good news is they've got mine wrong on here, so I that's why I didn't get it. So that's at least the good news. Mine's wrong.
And by the way, hopefully everybody's got my new email address. Not that I expect anybody to use it, but
Is that
Have you
my
been getting
card?
my emails?